49ers taking a shot, got him in! Room service, touchdown! Hunter!
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
Scatterboo, again a broken tackle, and he can walk in, touchdown! Third of the first half for Cam Scatterboo.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
So now, obviously again, and Giddens, another huge hole. Giddens midfield and pushed out of bounds into Arizona State territory.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
Carson Hansen in the backfield with Rocco back, who's finally going to go deep and got a man wide open. And on the way is Jalen Noel. Touchdown Cyclones on one play.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
Fafita looking for T-Mac across the middle. T-Mac, give him another 6.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
Here we go, 365 Sports on this Thursday afternoon. We're going to take you over the next 3 hours on many things, college football, also guests that we have, Sam Kahn and Max Olson. And also today, Craig's Off the Radar, Paul's Top 5 to close out the show. And we look at TCU, the Horned Frogs, and their schedule for 2025. Also today during Off the Radar, I brought in a device that my grandfather, Pop, my mom's father, who lived in Virginia, the D.C. area. I've had it for 60 years, or he had it. He had it patented. We're going to show you that compared to what the NFL is going to try to do, they say, to actually get true measurements when it comes to where the ball is after each play. So that and much more. Emery Winter, Andrew Valade, and Garrett Ross today running the mothership. Garrett, take a picture if you don't mind. There you go. Garrett's birthday recently. He turned 40 decades old, 40 years old. So congratulations, happy birthday to Garrett. And also that's that cookie cake that we get from the Richland Mall American Cookie Company. Big 12 today announcing what they did last year, which was one of our favorite events. The Pro Day that will be in Frisco inside the Star, the 18th, 19th, 20th, and 21st. It is all the players. This is supposed to be loaded this year, too. There were good players last year. Tedero McMillan, obviously Hunter, Travis Hunter, Shedeur Sanders, Scatterboo, name them, Besh, all these guys are going to be around at that Pro Day in Frisco. We will be there broadcasting. We have not yet decided exactly what we're going to do or when we'll be there, but this is a great deal. What a year it will be for this year with who they have coming to that particular Pro Day.
Yeah, Travis Hunter, Shedeur, like Ted McMillan, Scatterboo. Yeah, I can't wait for us to do our show from there this year, interview Brett Yormark, and wind up changing the course of the Big 12 once again.
Yeah, quite possibly. Yeah, maybe we will if you're referring to us having a hand, I guess, for those who maybe don't pay attention, for us having a hand in them having media days in Frisco. But, yeah, there's some names you rattled off. There's also some other names, R.J. Harvey, Ollie Gordon, DJ Giddens, Taj Brooks, a lot of running backs, Devin Neal, that'll be a part of this apparently as well. And they're rattling off Joe Savanaya, big offensive lineman from Arizona, Jimmy Horn Jr., Savion Williams. There's a lot of different names from all over the 16 teams that are going to apparently be a part of this in some capacity. I'm interested to see an actual schedule because I don't know that you need like as many days as the NFL Combine has. I mean, 18, 19, 20, 20. I mean, that's the Combine.
Well, I bet one of them is probably an arrival date, and the other one's kind of a wrap-up date.
I'm interested to see the schedule, to see like exactly what those 4 days entail. But, I'm sure one day will be like measurements or something like that. But it seemed to work well for them last year. I don't know if they'll have a banner with as many names as that one right there has, with Shedeur and Travis Hunter, Scatterboo, McMillan, et cetera, on there. But that's a pretty good list. And, I definitely think they'll have all 32 teams in attendance. I'd be shocked if all 32 teams were in attendance. I don't even remember really who the headliners were last year. It was not a big draft class. It was off the top of my head, I can hardly remember, quite honestly, who was the big headliners.
A lot of the guys that we wanted to see didn't go.
Yeah.
So there were some good ones. We had Kobe Hudson he's there this year. Was the wide receiver last year when he went to the Patriots from UCF that was so good on our show. It was fantastic. And I'm forgetting his name, and I feel terrible.
You shouldn't have brought it up then.
Yeah, I shouldn't have brought it up. But no, we had some really good, interesting players, but the pick of the litter wasn't necessarily there.
No, this is nothing compared to what we have or what we could have. Your love child, Wyatt Milam from West Virginia. Also, let's not forget Devin Neal, Corey Kiner, R.J. Harvey. Craig, you mentioned Ollie Gordon.
I mentioned all those
and then
guys.
Taj Brooks and others. It's a great list of players who will be there in Frisco, and we'll have coverage. We'll let you know once we get all of that. It's a while from now, just a little less than, 2.5, 3 weeks for the pro day at the Star where the Cowboys are in Frisco. This story is maybe going to change the top of the NFL draft. Abdul Carter, defensive end, Penn State. A lot of people have him as one. If it's not Travis Hunter or if it's not Cam Ward or whoever it might be, they have found that he has a problem in his right foot. Now, the doctors are suggesting he does not need to have surgery, not advisable. Carter will work out, of course, at his pro day at Penn State late March. His agent, he will put on a show at his pro day. That is his tweet on the questions about his foot and his future. But I actually don't watch a lot of the podcasts prior to when we go on the air. I sometimes do in the evening. But there are some NFL's so-called analysts, draft analysts, that say you can't take that risk with him having any kind of a foot injury. DeMarcus Lawrence of the Cowboys are a hell of a player, is had foot injuries. Others do too. NBA big tall guys have it all the time. Paul, what have you heard?
He doesn't need to have surgery. I don't think it's going to affect it that much. He's especially this might be great news for the Cowboys and that he might fall all the way to 12 and they can draft him because they love to draft the injured guys. No, I think this pushes him all the way down to his floor is now at 5.
Okay.
I don't think it's going to affect it that much. He's the best pass rusher in the draft. Foot injury, no foot injury. Because he is so similar to Micah Parsons, it still wouldn't surprise me to see the Titans take him first or somebody trade up with the Titans to take him first because, there may not be a quarterback that's worthy of the first overall pick, and we may get down to that with Cam and Shadur. I'm not sure what the teams will think about that, but Abdul Carter is your normal kind of first pick defensive end pass rusher guy now, classically. So I think it's not going to affect him that much, particularly because he doesn't need surgery. If he needed surgery, that would be another thing. But if it's a stress reaction, keep him off of it, and that's the only way to really heal it now. So I think that's good news for them overall.
I don't know if they say he doesn't need surgery, but they're advising him surgery is not advisable. So that is Abdul Carter, the stud defensive end from Penn State. I'm going to look up his stats against Notre Dame when they played in that semifinal game and see what he did. But when I saw him play, even late in the year, he missed a little bit of time, but he looked as dynamic as ever. I love this one. I'm not sure if it was Garrett or Paul that sent this. Tyler Warren, Penn State. I wear 44 because when I was younger, my dad put on John Riggins' film, and I said, this is how I want you to run the ball. John Riggins, of course, a dynamic running back out of Kansas, Big 12 team. Back then it was Big 8. And Tyler Warren, he's one of those guys you have now at that tight end position, can do more than just block. He can do more than just catch. He's very, very good, and he is also one hell of a fun personality.
Well, if they don't ban the tush push, I have a feeling that he's going to do that for whatever team drafts him. He's a fantastic player. I know that that got your attention when he said John Riggins.
Yeah, it did.
He's a big fan of Ringo. Look, he's going to be one of those guys that's a bit of a Swiss Army knife because of all the things. And you saw what Andy Kolnicki and Penn State had him do, taking snaps out of the shotgun under center, tight end around, running the ball, splitting him out wide, whatever they could to get the ball in his hands. So
who does he remind you of?
A little bit like Brock Bowers,
okay.
In that they did that stuff kind of with Brock Bowers. And I don't know, like maybe George Kittle in the way that he runs his routes and things like that. They're very similar.
I think it's because he has long hair.
Yeah, but I mean, I think he could easily been an Iowa tight end.
He's not a Gronkowski type, but it doesn't mean he can't be that kind of hybrid. Craig, anybody you think of when you see Tyler Warren? Nobody? Okay. By the way, Abdul Carter had 5 tackles, 3 solo tackles, and a sack in that game against Notre Dame. They lost 27-24 in the semifinals.
Just imagine if his foot felt better.
Yeah, exactly right. All right, the LSU Tigers are looking for a new defensive line coach, Bo Davis, who had just left, a couple of years ago from Texas to LSU, known as one of the best defensive line coaches in all of college football. Here's something I saw, and this was not attached to this particular story by Luke Johnson or by Luke Johnson. LSU, Garrett, they are about to have their 11th defensive line coach in 12 years and 7th in the last 6.
It's and when you look at the struggles on the defense, it makes sense. The inconsistency to be able to get players in there and develop them, I think that plays into it. Now, I know you can't put as much on to a specific of a position coach. It's a whole collective that makes things tick. But at the same time, the inconsistency of that, I think, leans towards the track record of LSU not being as dominant on the defensive front as you've seen in the past.
That was always to me, one of the things that separated them and some of the SEC schools, and even Dave Aranda mentioned that when I asked him about it 21 season when they were so good at Baylor. That defensive front, and LSU used to breed them. I mean, just had tons of players, it seems like, year after year. Now, 12 in 11 years. 11th coach in 12 years as far as 7th in the last 6. All right, last night, Chris Del Conte, the AD at Texas, who has done a remarkable job there with the stability. They've had people go in and out, the hiring of Sark and much more, had a town hall meeting. He was asked about whether or not he was committed to stay at Texas. And there was, because Jay Hartzell, the president at UT, now at SMU, there was that, well, maybe he'll bring Del Conte with him, and of course I'm sure Hartzell would like to do that, especially when Rick Hart at SMU resigned. I ain't going to SMU to ride a pony. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, I think that Jay Hartzell and Chris Del Conte situations are a little bit different. Chris Del Conte has what is the premier athletic director job I think that you can get, because DeLoss Dodds built it to that for sure, and then it wasn't that for a little while, and now he's come back and been able to infuse some of that energy back in. He might have to make a decision about a basketball coach here soon, but even still, Texas athletic department is going as strong as it ever has, and I don't see any reason why you would, no offense to SMU, they've got the money to pay him if they want to, but why you would go to SMU from Texas.
It's the dumbest non-story that I guess got them some traction. I see no reason why Chris Del Conte would leave Texas to go to SMU. I mean, I guess maybe if you think the relationship with Hartzell's like super tight, I mean, as in they're like practically lovers, then maybe that would be a pull to go to SMU. But beyond that, I have no idea why anybody would even consider that as a possibility. The guy clearly loves Texas. That's the job he was always aiming for. And he just announced like $30 million in new spending. Mm-hmm. They announced I don't know when the official announcement was. I know you'll get to it, but all these new projects they've got, it's like he's not going to SMU for that. I mean, I know SMU's got deep pockets. They don't have Texas deep pockets though. Like, I mean, if you get down into like the gold reserves under the school and things like that, he's at the biggest school you can go to. So yeah, that's silly that that even became whatever it became as far as a conversation. I don't see anything prying the Texas job from him out of his cold dead hands. I mean, that would be about the only way to do it, in my opinion at least. So, yeah, I don't think he's going anywhere for a very long time, and certainly is not leaving for any other school inside the state of Texas.
He did mention Rodney Terry in basketball, and he said it's the ebbs and flows of the season. Last year we were a part of the Big 12, and Of course, they had a great run, and this year we're a part of a conference, SEC. Trey Johnson, the freshman, had 39 last night, and they lost to John Calipari at Arkansas. I did not know the score. I just saw the highlight reel of Trey Johnson. I said, that's another one of those when they need to win, they get a win. And then just realized a little bit after that, they lost in overtime.
Well, also, he said 2 years ago they were in the Elite Eight. So,
yeah, and
they
were.
We're going to act like he's done nothing.
Yep.
But, at the same time, they are a school where if you aren't, at your best for more than like a year, it's like, let's go hire whoever the biggest name is we can possibly get, right? And so he's pretty much done that across all sports, going and getting Schlossnagle, going and getting Steve Sarkisian, and we could go down the list of all the other hires that he's made. But, they pretty much have an elite name who's like one elsewhere, or is somebody like a Sarkisian who's been groomed to be great. And you see the signs of him being great. That's what they've done. I've never got that feeling off of Rodney Terry. That felt like a guy who was in the right place at the right time, who also has a good resume, do not get me wrong, but I don't think that's the same type of guy that you pick that if they had their free reign to pick, that they would have gone and picked. I think that was a
situation. If he had been somewhere else, Rodney Terry?
What?
If it was Rodney Terry, if they'd been somewhere else?
They'd been somewhere else.
If he had been at another school, he would not have been the choice.
He would not have been the choice.
I agree.
He was there because Chris Beard's situation got all out of whack.
I know that, but I was asking if he was outside of that bubble. Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I don't think he would have been their first choice, and I think they'll eventually go get some big swing at somebody else. But right now, he has been the Elite Eight in the last couple of years, and so we'll see how that plays out for him. But I get why there's a discussion about it.
I think every AD ought to do what Del Conte did, and he's done it a couple of times, and it's open for him. And even there was one question before we get to the next tweet or comment was somebody brought up pickleball. He quickly just said, it's not an NCAA sanctioned sport.
Yeah. By the way, if you want to talk about leaving somewhere, like he just brought his best friend to Texas in Jim Schlossnagle. He's going to leave in 6 months? No.
Also, with the revenue sharing, whatever eventually is the end game of the House settlement, the NCAA and House settlement, the publicity rights, the revenue sharing, increasing scholarships, that Texas will add $13 million in revenue with various ways, and then also save $6 million in budget reductions, et cetera. Of course, they're going to be at that $20 million or so threshold that most everybody else is going to be when it comes to distributing the revenue sharing from the House settlement and also that particular change in college athletics and college sports. He mentioned this. This is one that I'm pretty good in math. It's kind of like the scholarships when we said yesterday that there was 105 or they're going to lose. So they're going to add 142 women's and 68 men's scholarships and $9.2 million. There's that $9.2 million to the budget. They're going to add 210 new scholarships because of the revenue sharing and add a $9 million to what is their overall budget. That is a mass amount. Like, for example, baseball, there's always been like partial. I'm sure some have had full. They're going to have 28 scholarships. Now, there's some sports, women's sports and other sports, that are going to have many more than they have right now. Football remains the same as everyone else will be with the new limits on scholarships, but they are adding over 200 scholarships to UT athletics for a lot of the sports that right now are partial, grants, et cetera, to be able to play at UT.
Yeah, if there was one school that the House settlement came down and they were just mad about the paperwork end of it, it's Texas. Like they didn't have to worry about the money part of it at all. Like it's not going to derail anything that they do. I mean, they've been throwing money at things forever. I think that the term money whip came out of Austin, when it comes to those things. So when the House settlement came down, they're probably just like, yeah, all right, this is gonna be some more office work, but really that's no different for anything with them.
Well, they're going to have plenty of scholarships to pass around, and they're really good at a lot of sports. Remember, they've won a couple of those. What is it, the Learfield or whatever they call that cup for the most or deepest, most successful athletic programs. This year, North Carolina's having a pretty good run among others. Stanford's always in that mix, but UT will be adding more, but also cutting, as we had just a moment ago. And then also this. The ability to add revenue, put logos on your field or put logos on your uniforms, that's part of the deal, right? Let's not mess with perfection. In what Chris Del Conte said when asked that question about the possibility of adding revenue streams by putting logos on DK Royal Memorial Stadium or, Earl Campbell Field, and or the logos that UT has with their very, very unique and very rarely ever mess with what they have with their uniforms.
I don't know what would be so different about putting a logo on the field. I mean, that's not like.
You've never heard people talk about how perfect the field looks? Yeah, me neither.
Yeah, it's never a thing. I mean, this is also a team that has a giant fallopian tube that the players run out of in the end zone. So, I mean, I get it. Don't put them on the uniforms. I agree with that. They have perfect uniforms, but but the field, like, that's maybe,
I mean, I couldn't tell you the first thing about what their field looks like in terms of.
It's green and it's got yard lines.
I mean, I don't know. It's got a big
Hash
longhorn
marks.
on it.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that's cool for them. They can afford to do that. A lot of other schools won't be able to, but I think if you can avoid having to do gimmicky advertisements like that, which they are, but it's also not necessarily a bad term because the NBA has patches on their jerseys. MLB has patches on their jerseys. There's signage all over MLB fields, and I don't really pay attention or notice it all that much. I might go, oh, there's a Goodyear tire sign, and then it goes out the other ear, and I don't even recall it 5 seconds later. But if you can avoid it and keep it as ad-free as possible and kind of clean and streamlined looking, then, yeah, that's great. I don't think most people are going to probably notice. They would notice if you slapped something like a Pepsi logo on the white jersey. Like, that would be noticeable. I don't know. I think we have to see how various schools do this. Some will probably go bigger than others. Some will have more than others because they need to or just want to, I suppose. But, I think if you can avoid ads, that's great. But they're in a luxury position to be able to do that and then go add all that money that you were just talking about. And most other schools, 99% of them, aren't going to be able to do that. So, yeah, we're going to see ads. But good news if you're a Texas fan and don't like the idea of that, you won't have to worry about it.
Well, $13 per game ticket raise is to help offset some of that revenue sharing. He also, I thought, was a pretty cool deal when he talked about secondary market tickets. Del Conte said that he took 4,000 season tickets back from the secondary ticket brokers last year and made them available to UT fans to make sure the people in those seats are wearing burnt orange. That seems to be a very smart idea. I'm not sure how difficult that would be. Stadiums at times, of course, have the invasion of teams that travel well, but he also mentioned that. It was a pretty good deal with what Chris Del Conte was able to do in front of course, a lot of people, including pickleball players as well.
Why are you so obsessed with pickleball?
It's the fastest growing sport in America.
Okay. I've heard that about soccer, and I've heard that about, like, every other sport.
Is it not? It is. I think it
hockey
really
was
no,
for a while.
I brought it up because a guy actually asked if they were going to have athletics was going to start to have pickleball. Now, there's a lot of club sports. You even have club volleyball, even if you have volleyball. But, pickleball. I just thought that was a funny question when otherwise most everything else was pretty relevant.
Pickleball is a sport for seniors, mostly, I would say.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, it's going to be the next big sport after F1. Oh, there's another sport I just mentioned that was the next big thing.
I think that's what's made it grow so fast is that older people can play it. Like, if you wanted to pick up tennis again and you're 67 and you've had a double knee replacement, maybe you can't do that, but you can play pickleball.
Well, there's that. There's also, it's for very affluent as well. Yeah. I mean, there's very much a country club type of sport.
It is.
It does have a following, and so I understand, I guess, why somebody who's into it would maybe ask that. But, yeah, I mean, it seems like he covered a lot of ground. It's interesting to have a town hall. Not every school's big enough to do that or probably have enough information to carry a whole event like whatever it is that you're referencing there. I don't know how they was it the town hall, the official title, or whatever it's
exactly
called.
what it was. Yeah.
But didn't they have some football facilities as well?
They had a lot of different things. Yeah, they did. They did. They talked about. He even brought up the Cotton Bowl with the concessions and parking and exits and all that stuff.
I mean,
it was more than just UT.
Everybody else is hurting for money, and they seem to have plenty of it. So nothing's changed in that regard. Nobody benefited more greatly than they did, and maybe there's others that benefit as much, but certainly I can't imagine anybody benefited more than Texas when this new era hit of pay for play and just money galore. I mean, they were set up perfectly, and quite frankly, their in-state rivals should be set up as well, but they just don't know how to do it the same way for whatever reasons those may be. A&M's got gobs of money too, but they just don't seem to have it all. They have the facilities, they're upgrading Bluebell Park, and they're doing all these things, but it just doesn't carry over on the field the same way for whatever reason. But those two and, Ohio State and a select, it's not even all of the blue blood teams. It's like even less than that. But, at the top of the list of who benefited most, Texas is certainly right there at the
Perfect
very top.
timing.
Again,
Yeah.
you can't do anything to them that's going to make them not have
Yeah,
money.
but you still have this. Listen, they have money.
Oklahoma struggles to get money.
Exactly.
That's where they don't just have it magically. They don't have the big vault under the school. I mean, they're as blue blood as you can get in football, but they only go so far. You still have to now in this age have all of that money too, and that's where they can have more national titles and more Heisman and more everything, but they don't have as much money, and they never will.
Well, they also sometimes step in their own poop like A&M does or others do, and UT's done that before, but right now they seem to be, for the most part, making good decisions across the board, and if they don't, they respond or react accordingly.
You want to know what the difference why A&M couldn't find its footing athletically since they became a school with women in it, when they weren't co-ed, it was different. When A&M was just a male military school, that's kind of a different thing. But when they became a massive university, the biggest difference between Texas and Texas A&M and why A&M cannot surpass them or get past it in spite of having just as much money and as many people who are, drunk with throwing it around to make football in particular better than anyone else is. DeLoss Dodds was a real athletic director, and A&M went from, it was Gene Stallings, and it was Randy Matson, and it was John David Crow, and they were still in the old school of, in the early part of the 80s and 90s, the athletic director was still an old athlete from there that was quite often a legendary athlete, which was somebody that could go, oh, look, Randy Matson, who was an Olympic hero,
right,
is going to come and ask us for money. That's great. But they didn't have that real athletic director, honestly, until Bill Byrne came there and then started revolutionizing.
Who was a great AD at Nebraska.
Yeah.
He left. They haven't been the same. And then he was at A&M, and, of course, he's passed on.
But 30 years of lead time of Texas doing it differently than not just them, but most everybody else. But that's why, in particular, A&M and Texas are different, because DeLoss Dodds was playing chess while they were playing checkers for so long.
And then you try to catch up, and then you maybe overextend yourself with that possibility. I did find this one more comment that has nothing to do with UT's campus athletic facilities, but he mentioned the Cotton Bowl, which of course is an antiquated stadium, but they had it's gotten a facelift and renovation. And it is an unbelievable palace, so to speak. He said that it was a mess. Concession stands, entries into the stadium, exits from the stadium. Said it was just the side of the Texas side of the Cotton Bowl ran out of beer. Of course, because they were winning and they were getting drunk. Oklahoma probably had a few drinks too because they were losing, but said it just became a nightmare and a mess. He's going to try to help with the logistics of that game. And if they're not careful, I can't imagine that. I can't imagine they'd ever leave that site because of what they have there. But at the same time, they got to be careful because you never know when Jerry's World might come calling. And maybe they have before. But he called that game, as far as the way it was run, as a disaster when it comes to the peripheral stuff outside of the game itself.
Well, I mean, it's a cool spot, but it's definitely old, and you've got to keep things up and up to snuff, especially when the alternatives are a shiny NFL stadium that has no problem with concessions. They've got self-checkout concessions, or they've got, TVs everywhere, or all these other amenities that make it a comfortable place to watch a game. Cotton Bowl lacks a lot of that, so I don't think you want to get away from the history, but you're not bound to them. They've got to do their part and make it a good atmosphere for the game, or you always have the threat of, we can go to Jerry's World, we can go to Austin, we can go to Norman, we can do whatever the hell we want, but people will want to host this game if you're not going to keep up your end of the bargain. So I think the Cotton Bowl will respond accordingly, and get dressed up what they need to get dressed up or improve what they need to improve to ensure they don't lose that. Because if not, what's the point of the entire stadium?
Absolutely.
I mean, there's no real point outside of a high school game here and there.
All right, we're joined by Sam Kahn, theathletic.com. Sam, thank you very much.
He just dropped off.
You want to break real quick?
Let's go ahead.
Let's regroup. We'll break. We'll come back with Sam Kahn from theathletic.com. This is 365 Sports, and we appreciate your time.
Pleasant. It's different than any other dentist office. I really feel like they care. And it's not that you're here for 2 hours waiting on someone to take care of you. It's quick and easy, and I bring my kids, and my kids love being here too. They really love the treasure box. Staff is really nice and accommodating, real friendly. You feel more like home. It's not sterile looking. Everybody has their own personalized rooms with decorations and decor, and they'll even have a blanket for you when it's cold. I've recommended people to actually come here, and they are patients now. I really love it here. It feels like family.
Whatever it is you wrangle, whatever seeds you sow, no matter what you nurture or what you choose to grow, at Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, we're proud to protect all Texans.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow at GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
President's Day sales event is on at Allen Samuels in Waco. Drive home a 2025 Jeep Compass for just $25,995 or a 2024 Dodge Hornet for only $27,995. Only at Allen Samuels.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
365 Sports, Sam Kahn, theathletic.com, joins us. He did a tag team story, Transfer Portal Confidential. Who was the best quarterback? What's the going rate for a Power 4 starter? The picture on the cover is Mateer going to Oklahoma, and also a picture of Texas Tech and one of their mascots. Sam joins us now on 365 Sports. How much fun was that? Did you find anything in particular that you didn't realize?
Yeah, it was interesting to me to hear all the different numbers that you hear thrown out for players. Because one of the questions we asked coaches and personnel staffers was, what's the going rate for a starter at various positions? And it was a really wide range. The one consensus that we got is for a Power 4 starting quarterback, $1 million is about the floor if you want a good quarterback, and then it can go upward from there. But there were some really wide ranges. For instance, one coach told us tight ends could be anywhere from $300,000 to $750,000. Edge rushers, I had one coach tell me anywhere between $250,000, $350,000, and one said that maybe up to $1 million. One said the floor at cornerback was $200,000. So there was such a discrepancy, and I think it reflected what is not surprising to me is that everyone's trying to figure it out. Because all this data that we have, it's all anecdotal. You don't know. You only know what you hear. There's no database. There's no sport track where we can track everybody's contracts like you have in some of the pro sports. So it's kind of a guessing game where the coaches and staff are to some degree at the mercy of the agents and the players. So there's a lot of guessing going on. And then, of course, at the group of five level, it's a little bit less on the money part. But that to me was most fascinating, is just how wide the ranges and how big the discrepancy can be depending on who you have.
Yeah, one of my favorite things about this column, Sam, is like getting them to tell you who they really liked, because if you look at transfer players, sometimes you wonder, why coaches like this person or why they went there or what the general consensus is. This has been pretty cool, just seeing how people thought about certain guys that went other places in the portal that they didn't get.
Yeah, no doubt. That's the thing, because everybody's going to like their transfers, right? Mm-hmm. You think when you on signing day in high school, you think you signed 25 really good players, and when you get 10, 15 transfers out of the portal, you're going to think you hit on all of them until you actually have to snap the ball on Saturday in the fall. But that's why we asked, hey, which player do you like the most who didn't sign with you? And similarly, when we asked about the portal classes that you like the best, it's which one do you like that's not yours, to get a real honest opinion on it, because I'm always of the belief that these guys are in this profession. This is all they do. The coaches we're talking to and the staffs we're talking to, they got a scout, and they're making their livelihoods on trying to guess which of these guys are good and which of these guys are going to make it. I had one coach tell me, for instance, that a class that he liked was Miami of Ohio because it was a Power 4 coach, and they liked a lot of the guys they took, but they just weren't good enough for that Power 4 program. But they could tell that by who Miami, Ohio took, it was like, hey, they have a good process because they identified a lot of the guys that we identified also that maybe just were a tick too slow or just not as big and maybe weren't as fast as we needed them to be. But I feel like you get a really candid take on these things when you kind of remove the team that coach is from the equation.
Sam, you asked about which portal quarterback, and I mean, John Mateer kind of seemed to be the guy, but that echoed with most of the coaches you talked to, right? I mean, he was mentioned by, I think, nearly everybody as far as which quarterback you like the best. So it seems like Oklahoma, as much as it feels as though they're kind of still finding their way a little bit, that was a grand slam for Brent Venables and company, at least on paper.
Yeah, no doubt. And anybody who watched him last year at Washington State, I think you can turn on the tape and watch, and he was a tremendous talent. I think there's fair to be skeptical or to ask, is that going to translate when you play an SEC schedule? Certainly it's going to be interesting to watch, but I don't really think that's as big of a deal because, look, we just watched Diego Pavia go from New Mexico all the way to Vanderbilt in the SEC, and he took down Alabama. I'm not saying the Mateer is Diego Pavia, but to me it's not as big a deal going from one step to the next as a quarterback, because it's not just about the quarterback, it's what you have around you. And Jackson Arnold or Michael Hawkins and what they did or didn't do, to me, wasn't really on them. It was really on everything that was around them, from offensive line, receiver, the injuries, and then offensive coordinator and scheme. So you get a situation here where you bring Arbuckle from Washington State, who was his offensive coordinator. So you're going to, to me, this is the smart thing, and you saw Western Kentucky did this a few years ago with Bailey Zappi, is you bring in the coordinator and the quarterback. And so that system continuity makes it a lot easier to pick up. Now, everybody else around Mateer is going to have to know that system and learn it, but the most important piece of the puzzle is him, and you look at his dual threat ability. He's a really good athlete. He can throw it, and almost every coach we asked, we didn't have every single answer that we got in here, because I think if we put every single one, 90% of it would have been John Mateer as the favorite portal quarterback. But he was by far, I think, almost unanimous in being the favorite that people liked in the portal.
So would you say it's safe to say that if you're a Power 4 school or a very high-level FBS school, group of 5, that it starts at $1 million with a quarterback and it might go $250,000 one way or the other? And, of course, it can go higher, but that's kind of the starting point if you're going to bring in someone. Mateer, most likely much more than that?
Yeah. If you want a good, solid starter, that it seems like $1 million is the floor, essentially, for a Power 4 quarterback. And I even asked about this with the group of 5 guys. It's like, how high do some of the group of 5 guys get? And a lot of the people I talk to who know the group of 5 all of us say, yeah, you're probably looking at even a good group of 5 starting quarterback in the portal. You're probably looking at $500,000 and maybe up to $600,000-800,000. And then you're going to see some outliers, as you see with anything. You saw, I think we've seen the numbers out there for Darian Mensah, which are way higher. I think $4 million was the number. I don't know how legit that is, but that number's out there. And then Carson Beck, of course, I know we reported that I think his deal somewhere in between, I think the $3 and $4 million range for Miami. So certainly there's going to be guys above that number, but that's the $1 million mark from everybody we talked to seems to be the baseline for a solid Power 4 starter out of the.
Sam, there was meetings this week that didn't come out with really anything new. Do you think that the role of the SEC and Big Ten in getting what they want has been at least slowed a little bit through these meetings?
I hope so. I really hope so. Look, the longer we can push this off and the more time that passes without it happening, you feel like you have a chance of staving it off for a little bit. And I do think the reaction to it, the reaction we saw to it, I don't want to say it was universal, but I felt like it was fairly close. I felt like it was really resounding negative reaction to the plan to give the 4 auto bid. So I'm hoping that gives them pause on doing it. I still don't. I can't say I'm confident that it's going to. I still think at the end of the day they're going to get what they want. They're going to do what they want, and to hell with everybody else. But I think every day that that passes without it happening, I think is a good thing. So, like I said, don't count me as optimistic. But hey, the fact that they didn't come out of these meetings and they didn't say, "Hey, this is the plan," I guess that's a plus.
So, Sam, there's a story going around. The Pac-12 is obviously trying to better itself, and they added some schools here in the last few months, some good schools. They're still out on the search, though, and you had the San Diego State AD who was talking about how they should have a TV deal here in the next few weeks, and the goal is to add a football member to get to the threshold, and then once they do that, then they might add another 1, 2, or however many schools. All the schools being rumored are kind of the same ones, Tulane and Memphis, but one that still hangs around is Texas State. I just was curious, have you heard anything new on the Texas State front? Any murmurs, any talk about just sort of their future and the Pac and anything along those lines?
No, I haven't. I haven't really dug into that as of late.
Sure.
Just, I focus so much in the winter on the portal stuff and obviously the playoffs, but I still think, to me, it still feels like an awkward fit, but I guess all these, Northern Illinois is an awkward fit as a Pac-12 also. So I guess that they would be unique in that way. But I will say that I think Texas State has a lot to offer. If they're trying to move conferences, I think they have a lot to offer because they are a pretty decent sized public school. It's in a desirable location. Obviously, you have a really good recruiting footprint. They've got a lot of alumni. And the football program is on the way up. Their success recently, I think, has been really good for them and really good for this part of the country to add another really competitive team in this part of the country. So I think they have a lot to offer as an athletic department. They seem to be committed. They're building facilities. They're not, certainly NIL situation is not where you want it to be, but they're trying. They're doing their best to get that part, improve that part, and I do give their staff and their athletic department a lot of credit for trying to be creative and trying to do their best to compete on that front. It's really hard for Group of 5 schools at this point, and when the revenue share comes, that's going to be another conversation. I don't know where they are in terms of how much they're looking to fund from a revenue share standpoint, Certainly, I don't anticipate any group of 5 schools are going to be funding at the full number. I think it's going to be, you're probably looking at probably half or less of what the Power 4 schools are going to do. But the question is, can you be competitive with everybody that's in your class? And if they can do that, then I think that gives you a chance. So I do think they're a program that's got a lot going for it. And if the Pac-12 is still interested, I can certainly understand why.
What was the reaction when you polled or discussed spring games with coaches around the country with the article you did in The Athletic?
I think it was varied. There are some, I think it's 2 different issues, right? The spring game is one issue and spring football is another.
Mm-hmm.
Because the spring game, I think we can all agree in a lot of instances has aided in its importance in that it becomes very vanilla because so many of them are televised now. So and coaches don't want to give anything away. Coaches don't want guys to get hurt going all out. So, and then their fans in the stands. And so they become largely like exhibition. And I mean, they are exhibition, but I mean, they become largely, they're not a real practice, so to speak. Some schools still do a really good spring game, but it's very few and far between. That's one issue. And I think a lot of coaches could do just fine without it, but you do run the risk of alienating your fans if you don't do something, because that is a low cost or no cost way to engage your fans who may not be able to afford to come to a game in the fall because of how expensive tickets and parking and travel and all that is. The spring game is a really good opportunity to open it up to people who may not have that opportunity. So that's why I do hope that no matter what it looks like, that they're still engaging the fans in that way. Now, spring football, on the other hand, every coach I've talked to, I think, still believes in the value of practicing in the off season in some form or fashion. I think the biggest question that we kept coming back to when I talked to coaches and asked them about it is the timing of it. And I don't think it's one size fits all, because if you're Ohio State or you're Texas or you're Notre Dame and you played into late January, it might not make sense for you to be putting on pads in March and April because you played such a long season. But if you're a team whose season ended in November because you didn't go to a bowl game, or you had a late December bowl game, then maybe the calendar still works for you. And all that to say that none of that matters until we get to figure out where the portal window is going to end up being. Is it still going to be 2 portal windows or not? Because if you're going through 15 spring practices and 15% of your team changes because that many of them get in the portal after spring football because of where they are on the depth chart, I don't think it makes a lot of sense to do it that way. So in my opinion, and this is where I landed with a couple of coaches who I think agreed with it, is if we're going to keep spring football as a thing, then either we should give coaches some flexibility to move it in the calendar, maybe do some in the spring and some in the summer, or if we're going to do it in the spring, then we need to move to one portal window in the winter only rather than having one after spring football. I think the more practice time you can have with your entire team rather than only a portion of your team is, I think, the sticky part of the issue here. I know Rule said the thing about tampering. I don't think that's as big of an issue as people made it out to be. And I asked a lot of coaches about that. There was one coach who said, yeah, we cut up all the spring game, but most of the coaches I've talked to said that this is not something we really do a whole lot of. I think the issue is how much of your team you're practicing with, and are you investing 34 days and 15 practices worth of time into a team that's not even going to be what it looks like when you kick off in the fall. That's the thing I think they need to fix.
In fact,
I'll be curious to see how creative they are in those solutions.
John Sumrall, who's going to have a spring game, said if they're going to leave, they're going to leave anyway. So I don't waste a lot of time or energy thinking about who's watching our spring game, and of course they're going to still have their spring game. Paul,
I think it'd just be more effective to, move your maybe have a spring event where you bring back alumni and players and do a cool thing for the fans, and then that can maybe lead into a couple weeks from then you start your summer OTA practices. I think that's probably a more effective way to do it and rebuild the calendar. But Sam, the calendar, I can't think of another thing that's more a mess than that calendar, that there are so many different ways they could figure it out, but there's so many roadblocks in the way that don't make it easy.
Yeah, no doubt. It is difficult because as long as this is still college football and there's still ostensibly an academic component tied to it, you are still restricted to some degree by the academic calendar, which means things have to happen on the semester. So either you're going to have If you have 2 portal windows, they need to be close to the semester ends. Or if you're going to have one, then it needs to be at the end of the winter semester, or it needs to be at the end of the spring semester. So I think that's a challenge, and I do think you can ask different coaches, and I think some of them want 1 portal window, some of them want 2. I think they just need to come up with something. And I do think the other thing that makes this the challenge, and as I mentioned earlier, is that one thing doesn't work for everybody. One thing that works for the Big 12 or the SEC or the ACC or the Big 10 does not necessarily work for the American or the Conference USA. And so I think flexibility is important. We do need some structure, and I think we do need some improvements to the calendar, but I also do think it's important to provide flexibility based on what's best for your program, because trying to make North Texas do it the way that Ohio State does it also doesn't make a lot of sense.
Sam, the surge in hiring general managers yesterday, Jim Nagy, who ran the Senior Bowl, now going to Oklahoma, which everybody, it seemed like all of the responses were very positive, and everybody has this kind of a GM-type position now.
Nebraska just hired a dude from the Patriots.
13 years in the NFL, Patriots and the Carolina Panthers with Matt Rule hiring him, Stewart. Your thoughts about the trend? There's a story that was written, I just went blank on the name. He's been around, Cody Belair, he's been around various programs in college football, and he was saying, it seemed like a pretty good idea, but do most colleges know exactly what they want the GM to do?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because I saw that earlier today, and I know Cody really well. He worked at Texas Tech, Baylor, at Texas A&M, and LSU in the scouting departments, and he's got a lot of real-world experience, and I think he asked a really good question is what are you paying them to do? Mm-hmm. And what is the return on that investment? Because I think this is where it really becomes imperative on athletic directors and athletic departments to know what's going on. Because, for instance, Texas Tech has a very clear vision of what their GM does. Joey McGuire sets that plan. James Blanchard executes it and has the freedom to do so. And it's identification, evaluation, and acquisition. Now, if you want your GM to oversee football operations on top of recruiting, that's a different skill set. So do you want your GM to be an evaluator? Do you want him to be a recruiter? Do you want him to be an operations person? Because I think when you put the GM title in college football, you will find people that fall under all of those categories, not necessarily all the same. Most of the ones that I'm thinking of are mostly evaluators who are evaluating the talent, and they're making decisions on roster management. And I think that's ultimately what needs to be happening. And then also, as we get into the rev share era, you're going to have people dealing with payroll and contracts and how you allocate your salary. And those are 2 different skill sets. So maybe you need a GM, and maybe you need a GM for evaluation, and maybe you need an assistant GM to handle the financial side, someone who's got experience negotiating contracts and managing a payroll. Because I think asking every GM to do that when they maybe not is their strength is going to be a little misguided. You're not going to love your results. That said, I think the trend is understood, and I think it's necessary because roster management is a different animal. We're not signing 25 high school recruits every year and calling it a day. You are building your team with high school, transfer portal, junior college, all these different ways that you're adding players to the roster, and you have to turn it over every year in a different manner, and you have to retain players, and you have to attract players with your finances. So there's so much that goes into it. I think these front offices need that support, but it's not just a matter of just hiring guys and say, here, go do it. You got to have a clear organized plan. You got to know what you want and figure out how to execute it. As for Oklahoma, I thought Nagy was a great hire because if you're looking for an evaluator, hard to find a guy any better than Jim Nagy, who's been evaluating college talent for 2 decades and has been, for the last 6 years, has been not just scouting the Power 4 schools, but digging through FCS, Division II, and even Division III to find guys to invite to the Senior Bowl. That's exactly what you're looking for, because when you're looking in the portal, you are trying to out-evaluate guys. Obviously, you need to pay them, and obviously you need to win the bidding wars. But the difference is can you get a guy that maybe others didn't see? And I think that's where winning on those margins is going to help a program like OU where it's so tough in the SEC.
All right, that's good. Greg, all right, Sam, thank you very much, my friend. Appreciate your time. We'll talk to you again next week.
Thanks so much. I'll take care.
Sam Kahn, he's been involved with writing a lot of those stories, including the transfer portal. And you saw teams, one of the stories that they wrote about the portal, and teams that were all in. One of them was Texas Tech, and we've read about that. There are some that probably are under the radar. Oklahoma got a little bit of nudge or two, but LSU, Garrett, with not just being a playoff team, but being somebody that gets back to what they're known for with the championships they had with Saban and Les Miles and Ed Orgeron.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to have to find somebody to come down there and evaluate the talent and compete with this. It's going to be a challenge, especially when you see what Oklahoma's doing and the other moves, because the SEC is going to go all in on this.
All right. When we come back, Max Olson will top off the 4 o'clock hour. Craig's off the radar around the corner. Mickey Spagnola, thoughts about the NFL Draft Combine, which started today in Indianapolis, and much more. Paul's Top 5. This is 365 Sports. Baylor alumni fan engagement, Paul Thorpe and Doug Furch, they probably already know what is happening when they go to Kansas City for the Big 12 men's and women's basketball tournaments. They will be at the team hotel, wherever that might be, and there will be different activities, events, even maybe mixers or whatever, that people can hang around and discuss either the games or just say hi, who haven't seen each other coming in from different parts of the country. And then they'll do that again. Wherever they end up, Baylor women in the NCAA tournament might even host the first couple of rounds. That remains to be seen. They have a huge game on Sunday against TCU for the championship. And then the men have work to do. Obviously, Oklahoma State is next to get into the tournament and wherever they are sent. But they will have activities, events, and dinners and speaking engagements on the road wherever Baylor plays when it comes to athletics. You can go to Baylor.edu, Doug Furch, and also Paul Thorpe are your contacts at the Baylor Fan Engagement Alumni Association.
Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
Don's Humidor, your home with a 48-foot walk-in humidor with the elite cigar brands from around the world, including the #1 cigar of the year, Aging Room Cuatro Nicaragua. Plus, they have the great brands like Macanudo and Artur Fuente, Rocky Patel, Aston, and so much more. CBD, great for sore muscles, aches and pains, sleep, Vita Dreams, and anxiety, mild depression, general health and wellness. Their staff very knowledgeable on the subject. Don's Humidor in the Townwest Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco.
Ready to take your business to the next level? Carrion Solutions has got you covered. We deliver world-class IT consulting, including Quest On Demand and Migration Manager, M365 and Exchange migrations, Active Directory assessments, security hardening, and Windows Server upgrades. Our experts specialize in consulting, monitoring, support, and managed IT services. We promise vision, professionalism, and unbeatable value. Satisfaction guaranteed. If you're not happy, we make it right. Remember the name Carrion Solutions. For more info, email sales@carrionsolutions.com or visit carrionsolutions.com. That's CARRION solutions.com. Carrion Solutions IT success guaranteed.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
This is 365 Sports. Text us at 254-339-1122. The text line is sponsored by Riverbend Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. A hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
Max Olson, ESPN, really cool article that he's written. Key players that were kept out of the college football transfer portal. Max, of course, keeps up with it and joins us on 365 Sports. Max, during the time, and I know that there's really never, I know there might be a downtime or there's portal windows, but do you have like a shock collar on your phone that's attached to your neck when in the middle of the night, if somebody transfers, you're awakened by it?
Yeah, there should be like a bat signal that the NCAA can set up for the few of us who are obsessed with this stuff. That'd be great. We've been living in peace here for the past few weeks. Feel like we're in off-season mode from the transfer standpoint. So, I mean, that means they'll probably start next week, right? It never relents. So yeah, it'll be coming up again soon. You got the short little April portal window coming up quick.
You wrote the article, and it's about what teams retained the high-level players from going elsewhere. And your first one, start off with Ohio State with Carnell Tate, the wide receiver.
Yeah, and this is, the piece kind of combines players that, would have been valuable in the portal, and then players that, also bypassed the NFL draft to come back for another year. And I think, as you saw, obviously at Ohio State a year ago, the fact that they were able to get so many of their guys to come back for their senior year and turn down a chance to be draft picks to go chase a ring. Obviously, we saw how that paid off. But, yeah, Carnell Tate is, it's kind of what you'd expect, right? I mean, we're all calling Jeremiah Smith a generational talent, deservedly so. And so, he had plenty of people in his ear saying, hey, you're number 2 wide receiver there. Come over here and, make a lot of money and be the guy. And, I think he really did not entertain that. I don't think Ohio State was in danger of losing him. But that's an extremely talented number 2 receiver there who's staying to keep playing with Brian Hartline now that he's the OC. And, interested to see if he can really have a breakout year and prove that, he is a first-round type of guy.
Max, what surprises you more when a guy decides not to go to the NFL or he transfers between, 2 big schools?
So definitely surprises you more. I think that I think it's the portal piece because I think frankly a lot of these personnel departments when they're looking at hey, who are the really premium players that we can try to bring in this portal cycle, really they're looking at the guys that just have mid to late round draft grades, guys that hey could they come back for one more year? Obviously Carson Beck's the super premium example of that, but that's what guys are looking for. It's hey, can we convince a guy to stay in school and, maybe make more money from one more year of college? And so, those are the players that everybo's fighting over. And, if those guys have multiple years, then great. But I think that when you're looking for a big upgrade, that's the big goal right now. And so those guys are worth a lot. They have a lot to think about in December and January. And, I think we've seen the underclassmen entries go down for the draft, which I for years that number would go up every year, and guys would go undrafted, and you'd say man, it's really unfortunate. I think guys just have the ability to stay put and make more money, and I think that's leading to some pretty good outcomes.
What do you think was the asking price for those who were trying to get Kevin Jennings to enter the portal?
Oh my gosh. If anybody was fishing around on Kevin Jennings, I mean, if you're not offering at least $1 million, you're obviously wasting your time. My sense from talking to people, especially around the Big 12, the cost of just bringing back your starter for 25, we're talking 1.25 to $1.5 million, sometimes more, sometimes closer to 2. I think that's just kind of the going rate. If you've got a starter and you want to keep him out of the portal and you don't want any of that mess. I think especially with the way that people are kind of allocating their money for 25 in the revenue sharing, I think that's kind of the starting point. Is I'm sure Kevin Jennings is making that kind of money at SMU, at least $1 million, I would think. But this is as we saw with Miami, Carson Beck. The ones that have a need are going to go out and find out. Okay, well, who's out there? Who could be convinced for the right price to come here? And so that's just when you're shopping and you're an elite program. I don't doubt that, that happens. And, truthfully, when those guys start getting hot, that's when it begins. Like, I'm sure when Kevin Jennings, really started stepping up in October, that's probably when people started reaching out to him.
Max, one of the players you mentioned for Texas was Trey Moore, who is he's the biggest one that Jeff Traylor's ever lost, and he's probably like the biggest one that Texas has ever gone down to get that. Were you surprised? Why were you surprised that he came back more than maybe some of the other guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there wasn't a lot of danger. It didn't seem like when it came to Texas bringing back like Colin Simmons or Ryan Wingo or Anthony Hill or like those really, premium players that they've got for next season. But I think Trey Moore, the sense was as you saw kind of that flood of Texas players making their draft announcements right after the season was over. I think Trey Moore felt like a coin flip, and it seemed initially like he was probably going to go pro, and they were able to get him to come back, and the fact that they can get another year out of him, and he can benefit from another year of development at that program while playing with Colin Simmons and some really good pass rushers in that program. I think that's a big plus for Trey Moore, and I think it's a huge win for Texas in a defense that was able to pretty much hold on to the guys they needed to hold on to this offseason.
Max, what are your thoughts on a couple of the GM hires that we've seen here lately and just that trend continuing on? Patrick Stewart going from the Patriots to Nebraska, joining Matt Rule. We also saw the big splash by Oklahoma with Jim Nagy. Of course, there was the whole to-do with Notre Dame pursuing Texas Tech's James Blanchard. Just your thoughts on kind of the rise of the position, and it's kind of become star-studded almost in a way. Some of the guys, the resumes you would think would be almost maybe too big for the role, but it's been kind of interesting to track that.
Yeah, it certainly has, and I think Jim Nagy, that was definitely a wow hire by Oklahoma. He's done an incredible job with the Senior Bowl and turning that into a big time event for the draft process. And I know he interviewed for the Jets GM job this offseason, so it seemed like he had those kinds of ambitions. So really impressive by Joe C and by Brent Venables to get him on board. I think it's we're going to go through a really interesting transition period here because you have a lot of guys that kind of have the very traditional background of being the recruiting coordinator or the director of player personnel, trying to kind of move into that GM title and better pay and more responsibility. But certainly as you're seeing by some of the moves this week, I think ADs are looking at this and saying, we might need people with NFL experience to come in and show us how to manage a cap that is going to be a changing number year to year. And show us how to, negotiate with agents and really kind of get our costs under control when it comes to the talent. And so, I think those, and then, I don't know if you guys saw this, but like there's a report out there that Michael Lombardi, the GM at North Carolina, is going to make $1.5 million. So some of these guys are coming in and completely resetting the market on the pay for GMs because they have NFL experience. And, I think Jim Navy does an incredible job. But guys like him, they're coming in to make you better on the portal. Like that, you already know how to recruit high school recruits. I think I'm very interested to see how that NFL approach comes into play when it comes to the transfer portal, because I think certainly having the scouting backgrounds that these guys do and the scouting context they have, I think is going to be very valuable when that portal's open.
I know you do well with like graphics and all that other stuff. I got one for you. Why don't you? I'm not asking you to, and I'm not expecting, but you have such a great staff that can work with you as well. How about a pyramid of what it's like now in college football, of where you are with how many different offices are there compared to even 5 years ago? You know what I mean by that?
Different offices?
Yeah.
I mean, it's true. The staffing needs just keep evolving, and it's unfortunate that, while coaching pay keeps going up, media pay isn't going up, guys.
Yeah, I know.
What's up with that?
Yeah, I know. We're the ones giving them the publicity, right?
No, it's a great point, Smokey. Like, I think that, I think you're going to need a bigger building. I think that's just how this is nowadays. You got a lot of people who, and there are some programs that, they have small recruiting operations and small budgets, and they get it done year after year. But you're certainly seeing that, like, a place like Oklahoma is saying, like, man, we need to make a really massive investment in a front office. And that term front office is not usually associated with college football. And, like, where does the power lie with those guys going forward versus, like, the head coach? I think is going to be pretty interesting. But you're certainly seeing that ADs are taking a very different approach to this, and it's a big investment. And does it make you a lot better than everybody else at recruiting? We'll see.
Well, you wonder, okay, like let's say Alabama, they need new office space. Well, let's go get rid of the waterfalls or whatever it was. Craig, you bring that up sometimes about how everybody had these arms races of what they were making available, which was more for show than anything else, or maybe even for ambience. But it is, so they're getting all this money, and yet $20 million or so is going to revenue sharing, and yet they're getting all this money, and now you're going to have to pay a GM $750 to $1.5 million, and then whatever his staff might be. It's almost like, in the end, are they going to make more money or not?
Well, then also, like, what's the return on investment of that, right? Whereas, like, you're also having to tell your head coaches of all of your non-revenue generating sports, like, ooh, yeah, we just do not have much money to give you guys in this new setup here, right? So, like, it's a lot of spending, and like I said, will that ultimately make you, like, so far ahead of your peers in recruiting? Will you revolutionize recruiting? I think that's the thing that I'll be interested to see, because I think the folks that come from the college backgrounds have been doing this a long time. I think they've done a good job of evolving in terms of their duties and responsibilities and the way they look at this stuff. But definitely fascinating to bring some fresh eyes in this, and a sport that, I mean, guys, like, you just step by step here, you got to say, like, I mean, it feels like a semi-pro sport.
It does. There's no question. Max Olson, ESPN, with us on Thursdays, most every Thursday. Last week, though, you took a trip to Disney. Is that right? Disney World?
That's right. Disneyland.
Disneyland.
Out in Anaheim.
Okay.
Yeah. We made the pilgrimage out to Disney now that I'm a Disney employee again, and it was beautiful. Yeah. The kid just turned 4, and he was all about it. He was fired up. We surprised him with the trip and everything, and we had a blast.
Here's the thing you've done, though. Like, next time you get in the car to go somewhere and you tell him it's a surprise, he's going to assume it's Disney World.
He's like, so we're going to the airport again, right? Yeah, for sure.
Like, oh, no, we were just going to go to a restaurant you like.
That's for sure. Yeah, if I try to take him to Culver's tonight, he's going to be like, this isn't Disneyland. But the best thing out there, beyond the weather, was I did not take my laptop out for 2 days. So an actual break from the mania.
Good for you.
For like 2-3 days there. It was good.
Was there a specific character that he liked or reacted to more than anybody else?
Yeah, I mean, he's a big Pixar kid. So the California Adventure is just full of Pixar. They got Cars Land, which he got to meet Mater and Lightning McQueen. Got to do we stayed at the Pixar Hotel. That was, and then the big hits for the rides were Toy Story, Monsters Inc., and a lot of Little Mermaid. That was a big hit as well.
Now, Smokey, outside the Little Mermaid, do you know when he said Mater, when he said all that, did any of that register?
I was starting to go Google Pixar. I know it's like all that cartoon stuff, whatever it is, animation, but I was not. You and a lot of others.
Are you guys park guys or not really?
Oh, I love it. Smokey, I don't think could do it.
Well, we went to Disney World and stuff like that.
Yeah, but I don't think you could do it now.
No,
you couldn't do it.
I don't know.
I mean, they have express passes now and stuff like that, so you wouldn't have to wait and line as long.
Yeah, like TSA pre-check.
I'll just tell you, Max. The first time that we went to what is now Joe's Kansas City, which at then was Oklahoma Joe's.
Oh, my God.
Smokey, I thought that you would think I was holding him hostage, the way he was acting in the line, that we're about to get this delicious barbecue. So I thought, if this is bad.
Did you go to the gas station too? Like, you go to the Real Thing?
Yeah. We went to the Real Thing.
Oh, man. Standing in line at a gas station is not everyone's dream. That's for sure.
No, but like, I'm about to get you some of the best ribs in America, so let's just.
Yeah, but here's my deal. I'm impatient anyway, but I walked up and there's like 75 people in line. And they go through it pretty quickly, but I didn't know that for sure. And I know that they have great, and the food was great.
He had hives. He was getting hives.
We also had gone to 3 other places where the barbecue was great, and we didn't have to stand in line, and it wasn't mean because they weren't as popular or as good. It's just that moment. Weren't we on our way out of town? Were we on our way out of town or not?
Yeah, we were on our way out of town.
Yeah. Max, you saw the video of Texas Tech and what they've done with their facilities. I saw a lot of people reacting to that with all the money, the commitment that they put into it. We're having Joey on, I think it's tomorrow. And with what they've done with all of their improvements, $240 million facility project?
Yeah, that's right. I think they put out like a 9-minute video that kind of walks through everything they've done there, and just extremely impressive. Obviously cost a lot. They got it done really quickly too, considering that they started this pretty early in his tenure, and the fact they upgraded their football building, upgraded their end zone, got them connected. It's a pretty big deal down there. And I'll tell you what, when I wrote the piece about Texas Tech's portal recruiting class, I talked to a few guys that are heading there, Reggie Virgil and Terrence Carter, and the players. I know everyone's like, well, they're getting paid a lot of money to go there, so of course they're fired up. But it's like those players, especially coming from like the G5 ranks, when they see the facilities and the amenities there, really blows them away. And I think that especially when you're recruiting transfers now, those guys are just trying to train to be pros. Mm-hmm. So if you can give them an advantage, that goes a long way. And so, yeah, I think it's certainly making a big impression on recruits. And, that I know that sounds like maybe we're hitting that era where people are going to kind of slow down spending on facilities, but Tech went for it for sure, and certainly one of the best in the country.
Well, we had Jamie Pollard on earlier this week, and we had Gene Taylor. Jamie was last week, Gene Taylor on Monday, and most of them have gotten ahead of the curve when it came to needing the money from donors, alums, et cetera, on the facilities upgrade. Like I know Baylor is pretty much well ahead. They got the pavilion built for basketball and move things around. They've got the Fudge Family Center, which is attached to the indoor, which was upgraded and renovated. And I mean, it is truly amazing what the schools and the universities and athletic departments have been able to do. Hey, man, thank you very much. Glad you're back with us, and have a great rest of the week.
Hey, thanks, fellas. Always a pleasure.
Max Olson, ESPN.com. One note, Sunday evening, Baylor and TCU, Big 12 women's basketball, they play for the conference title. Winner is the outright winner for the Big 12 women's basketball championship. When we come back just around the corner, we'll have Craig and Off the Radar, but more to get to. This is 365 Sports. Don's Humidor and Coffee Beans in the Townwest Shopping Center, Joshua and Cheyenne. They have a great business, and it's very unique. It's got different compartments, so to speak. They've got, I don't ever mention it very much. I'm not a coffee person. I've had one small little sip taste of coffee on my lips in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I thought it was hot chocolate. That's it. I used to love the smell when my mom and dad used to have their percolator, whatever it was, that would Folgers or whatever it was when they drank coffee. But I've just never been a coffee person. Meanwhile, they have coffee beans, fresh ground coffee beans. One of their favorite brands is Cowboy. They have CBD products. If you want, if you need a little bit of a, not boost, but a chance to maybe relax a little bit more before you go to sleep, Vita Dreams, it's a gummy. I take 1 or 2 of those most every evening. And they also have gummies for something that's very painful. I've stayed away from them. It's called For Bad Days with my shoulder, the stinging, the muscle spasms, whatever. But it does help when it comes to chronic pain if you want that too. And a 48-foot walk-in humidor. Cohiba, Padron, Rocky Patel, Macanudo, Ashton, great brand. Romeo and Julieta, Arturo Fuente, cigars inside the 48-foot walk-in humidor. Don's Humidor and Coffee Beans in the Townwest Shopping Center off Valley Mills and Richland Drive in Waco.
Alan Samuels House of Travel is a full-service travel agency with highly experienced travel consultants plus support staff with over a combined 150 years in the travel business. They are ready to take care of any travel situation for you, your family, and your business, and with the kind of knowledge to complete a seamless itinerary trip start to finish. They will search for the best deal to accommodate your budget from air to cars, ship to shore, hotel, and even meeting space. Name a destination and they've been there. They know the places to go, and international and missionary Travel is one of their unique specialties. Allen Samuels House of Travel, celebrating 50 years in business. Call Connie, Sherry, Linda, or Bambi at 254-776-2560 or find them on Facebook or at houseoftravelwaco.com.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at alliancebanktexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
Want to send a message to the show? Jump in the Rudy's Country Store and Barbecue chat room.
I don't know if that's always a good idea to jump into the chat room, 365 Sports, but it is obviously very entertaining, and sometimes there are different discussions, topics that have nothing to do with anything that we're talking about, which makes it even more lively inside the chat room. So here's an interesting story. You know, people are they just thirst for realignment news. ESPN confirmed that the Mountain West initiated mediation to discuss lowering exit and poaching fees with the Pac-12 and departing Mountain West schools. And so, this is something that really has kind of been under the radar because they're trying to figure it out, but it is right here, realignment information.
I'll correct you. I think it's been under the radar for you. I think it's been under the radar for some people. I don't think it's been under the radar at all if you're Oregon State, if you're Washington State, if you're Texas State, if you're Boise State or any of those schools. I feel like this has been very much a talking point for the last few months. It's just, not as much national interest as the Big 12 and what they were going through for a couple of years was, but I see plenty of people out on the West Coast that have been eagerly awaiting some finalization in this whole ordeal. I mean, the Pac obviously went and added a bunch of schools a few months back, and now it's a matter of some of those schools, like a Boise State leaving, created this situation with the Mountain West where they want their exit fees. And so then lawsuits arise, and you start fighting over money and who owes what, and you've got schools saying, well, we don't think that your exit fee holds up, and we're not paying jack, and that's where we are now. But it did seem like it was sort of at a standstill if you were looking at it like we mostly probably were, not on a day-to-day basis. And so now we've arrived at a point where it's continued to go on, and I think everybody's looking at their bank accounts and going, how much longer do we want to do this? Like, how much more money do we want to spend of the money that we actually have? Because we're not Ole Miss. We're not Michigan State. We don't just have like this big bank vault that we can rely on or this huge amount of money rolling in. We just saw J.D. Wicker from San Diego State say the other day that the Pac's going to have their TV deal here pretty soon, or their media deal, and so that'll be good news in terms of the money. But, this is the situation that needs to be cleaned up for everybody to be able to move forward and kind of know what's what. So, Gloria Nevarez has talked a big game, very much, giving the impression that they weren't going to back down. But if it's true that they initiated that, then I think that says something, obviously. And I do think money's got to be involved in here somewhere. I mean, I don't think the SEC, I don't think the ACC, I don't think the Big Ten want to, as much as, the first and third names that I mentioned there could sit in a courtroom probably forever. I don't think they want to do that and just burn through money. So I know that the Mountain West doesn't want to sit there and just burn through money trying to get this, solved one way or the other. So the best route is for both parties, I think, mediation. And that way you can, tie this loose end up and know what's what and go your separate ways. So I look at this as a positive if you're a Pac fan. And I think, I don't know, mostly probably a positive for most everybody. I think it would, though, depend. You'd have to drill down on, like, each individual school to know whether this is good or bad or whatever. But certainly if you're Pac fans, I think this appears to be good news because the other sides who initiated it, you've already taken some of their best schools, and now you want to finish the job and get complete and get your league moving forward.
Yeah, I think mediation this is always, to me, the most common sense place when it comes to these things, because it's where, like with FSU and Clemson in the ACC, they've been forced into it, and it's really where in mediation, because you're there to try to figure out an agreement, as opposed to if you're in court, you're trying to win,
right.
And so here, you're trying to win as much as you can, but that you're in mediation, it's not going to be like, ha, suck it, we got it. That's not really how it's going to be. And the Mountain West probably smart to say, like, all right, let's make a concession here that we're not going to go for all of it. They both really need to move on and start making their conference what it's going to be.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's slowing them both down to be in the fight, like you said, Craig. So might as well let's just skip to the end where we know that this number is gonna come down. Let's find that number.
Well, and to his point, like, I know that some Michigan fan doesn't really care about this, and I know that there's probably Michigan fans that didn't care about Utah and BYU and Cincinnati and whoever else, but it does kind of feel like once the Pac fizzled the way that it did kind of take a little bit of a breather, but this has been ongoing the entire time. And so I think, the writing's on the wall of, like, we're going to burn through all this money. Now, I do think there has to be some penalty for poaching those schools.
Yeah.
Like there's no poaching penalty. Well, of course you say there's no poaching penalty. I don't know what the legal documents say, so I won't pretend to be a lawyer here. But I do think there has to be some amount given.
Have other conferences had to pay?
Yeah, but it's always mediated down.
Yeah,
I mean, it's like Oklahoma and Texas. Remember, they're going to pay $200 million to have to leave because of what
they had to pay. Should other conferences who poach another conference have to pay? That's why I don't think the SEC had to pay Big 12. Yeah, but the conferences have had to pay other conferences that they take teams away from.
Well, this isn't the Pac. This is the schools that have joined the Pac that are mediating these lawsuits. This isn't the Pac-12. This is Boise State.
Yeah, you wonder if the Pac-12 will aid them in any way. Maybe they will with the money they're going to get.
If they'll what?
If the Pac-12 will aid the schools in any way with some of the exit fees.
I mean, I guess that depends on the details of the TV contract because I don't know how much money that will be for, or if there will be any amount that you could use for something other than what all is coming down the pipeline, just in terms of the regular spending, the house settlement, if that goes all the way through, and those types of things. So, I don't know. I think if they're able to, then obviously that would make sense. But, I mean, you've already seen Boise State, Colorado State, Fresno State, Utah State, San Diego State, all the states make that move, and they clearly want to go and get more, and that's where the Texas State comes into question, or a Tulane, or a Memphis. And, quite frankly, I know we probably don't have the same the Memphis folks that were around like 5 years ago, but I'd be happy as hell for them if they were to get an invite somewhere. I mean, you talk about a school that's been begging for it for a while now. And I know I've seen a good contingent of Tulane fans that, especially feels like they've got a little bit of something going on with their athletic programs, making a splash in football that, they'd like to move on as well. And, if the new Pac's all of a sudden spreading to Texas and Louisiana and whatever, I mean, that's notable. That's definitely notable. So you've seen all sorts of rumors, in terms of the possible targets. But this has been the big thing hanging over both. You can't really move on until this gets resolved. If you're the Mountain West, you need to, are we getting this amount of money, or what money are we getting? And then what do we then go and turn around and do with it? And if you're the Pac, you need to know Is this lawsuit over with? What amount of money are we giving away, if any? And then, boom, let's go get our extra football school to meet requirements, and then let's go get our extra 2 schools that we'll add on top of that, whatever that might look like. And we can all just move forward and deal with the 1,000 other issues that are already sitting on our desk that is not getting the time it needs because we're working on this lawsuit. So
yeah, Tulane, Memphis, USF, and UTSA were the ones who were targeted by the Pac-12.
Yeah, and then, I brought up Texas State with Sam just because I saw that.
Yep.
Gosh, what was it? I think it might have just been like a random Pac fan or something was bringing them up, and so I've seen them swirled around enough. I got to be honest with you. UTSA doesn't do much for me if I'm looking at it from a Texan perspective, but out west maybe it's a little bit different. But I mean, Texas State is not a big school. Neither is UTSA. But
it's a big enrollment school.
It's big enrollment, but it's not big audience. Big. You don't see a bunch of Texas State T-shirts when you roll around. You see a lot of TCU and Texas and A&M and Baylor and maybe even SMU at this point. But Texas State's like 8th or 9th or something along those lines. I do think, though, as far as an up-and-coming school and, a big enrollment, just a fun town.
In between Austin and San Antonio.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely got its upside. So I would say that about Texas State. And, G.J. Kinney obviously makes them a lot more attractive, but you can't go get a school based on a coach because let's face it, he's not going to be there for much longer.
He's given them absolute tremendous lift. Absolutely done a great job with
for little old Southwest Texas State, the party school that it was. I mean, for people that don't know, it was not before it was Texas State. It was Southwest.
Yep, Southwest
and it was the
Texas
biggest
State.
Party school, Playboy school, like all that jazz. And then they tried to we'll become Texas State, and they got all organized in that regard. But it's still Southwest Texas to me.
It hasn't stopped. I mean,
you know what the T-shirt fans are at Texas State? It's got like a beer mug on the front.
Yeah, exactly. So,
or one of the things you tried to suck down one day when you lost a bet.
I think it'd be cool for them. I'd be happy for them. I just don't know how big of a splash it necessarily makes.
Yeah.
But whatever's best for them. I'm not arguing against it.
If I'm the Pac, I'm trying to get into Texas as much as I can.
Yeah, you would be smart.
So UTSA and Texas State make the most sense to me in those regards.
I remember when I was in college, high school, my senior year at Randolph. And again, you got to remember, I was back before anything was invented. But I thought about Southwest Texas State because a lot of people, Randolph was a smaller school, but a lot of people were going there, A&M, some were going to Texas, and that was about it. And so I ended up going to Tyler Junior College because my father suggested, listen, you don't know much of, even though we'd lived there before, for like a short amount of time. And I was glad I did because then I was able to branch into Stephen F. Austin because of the broadcasting degree, et cetera. But yeah, Southwest Texas State, man, that's a big school. It's got a little momentum right now with GJ. He's put them on the map with what they've done with the Bobcats.
Yeah, so looking at it from as a guy who grew up in Texas, that doesn't necessarily knock my socks off. But I do think for that league and for trying to get into Texas and for up and coming brands that have a lot of potential, especially if you give them more resources, then I'm interested in what Texas State or a UTSA would look like. And I'm sure fans of those schools, especially schools that have moved around a bit, like a UTSA, I'm sure you just want to get somewhere and just sit there for a little while, right? You just want to find a home and have hey, this is our home for a while. And so, the Pac is trying to get to the finish line so they can round out their requirement and then go add what they need to add. And the Mountain West obviously would like to move on. So they're going to go to the meeting table or the mediation table and try to knock something out. But I think this is a positive sign for both parties as far as the fan bases. They just want to get on to the next thing and not deal with this lawsuit anymore.
The Northern Illinois football move to the Mountain West is official. That became official. That will start in 2026 too. How many days, when was the last time there was not something major other than just winning games and championships or et cetera in college football's landscape?
I don't know. You bring this up quite a bit of how it's so busy.
Well, because in the last 4 years, it's like they've shoved a watermelon down a water hose.
And that's what it is.
Yep.
I mean, you asked it 4 years ago, I guess. I mean, that is what it is. I mean, we've been living something for 4 years. It's pretty much just the standard now at this point. It's just
Oh, it's exhausting. But again, we're just covering it. Imagine living in it as an AD president, et cetera. It is amazing.
And they could fix a lot of it by just speaking hard truths about the calendar. And, one of the things I think they need to do, it's kind of like, I feel the same way about political campaigns that start like a year before the election. Like, okay, that made sense when you had to get on a train or a goddamn buggy or something to get to something, but
a horse and buggy.
Yeah, but now that you have, planes and the internet and all these other things, we don't really need all that. And so I feel the same way with recruiting, in that maybe recruiting shouldn't be 12 months a year for all these sports. Maybe they should just do it for a couple months, and then the other stuff can just be FaceTimes. Because some of this is just like the work-life balance and the way that you do it. And look, I never got recruited to do anything, so I don't know. Maybe players like it, but I do think for most of them, it's probably also exhausting that I have to go to this place and get recruited. Like, if they could fix the calendar and do that, I think
they can.
That should be.
They can if they. But at the same time, once they do, then they have something that is an exception.
But they don't. I don't know how much the coaches want it. The players would want it. I don't know how much that the people who actually would affect it care enough about the calendar.
Yeah, I don't know, but it's nonstop. It's a blur. It is absolutely a blur.
Yeah, you make that comment like once every few weeks of like, man, it's just so crazy.
Yeah, because you know what, I do, and it's because the more and more I think about, it was almost at the timeline of when we started this show in March of 2020, and it's just amazing. It seemed like it's been 5 years this April when we opened this up, so it's been about 5 years since college football. And then on top of that, not just the changes or the rules that have been blurred or whatever, it's also the fact those extra years that players and student athletes started to get along the way. Not just a medical red shirt or a grad assistant being able to, a grad get to play. Then you had the COVID year, which I think some athletes actually had 3 COVID years we just don't remember.
Yeah, I don't know, but you've seen spikes in, on the one hand, women's basketball had the most popular year it's ever had last year. College baseball, especially with the scholarship limits being raised, I think you'll see the SEC kind of take that over. They already have, really, but, completely take it over. But maybe other programs join the fray because now they can spend more money on scholarships. But I think college baseball has an opportunity to be interesting. Volleyball is a rising sport. There's some cool things that we've seen, but there's also a lot of the other BS that gets very tiring to talk about sometimes, but it's just a part of it until they get on the other side of it, and you can't just snap your fingers and be done with all these lawsuits. And here's the thing, the House settlement's not going to solve it all either. So when you have a sport that was basically held together legally by toothpicks and Scotch tape, this was the reckoning. This was all foretold, the prophecy, if y'all don't do something before you have to do something, you're going to have a big mess on your hands. And they refused to do anything until they were forced to, and now they have a huge mess on their hands. So I don't feel sorry for them, and quite frankly, thank God for it, because being a primarily college athletics, college football show, without all this, half of our content would be gone, quite frankly. So in that way, you can be thankful we're not talking about some minor league soccer team or something to try to fill 15 minutes in mid-March, because
that's why we have all
there's not a meeting about the new playoff. So, in that way, it's been great for a college football focused show. But, it does get tiring. And I think it's also, as much as I brought up the rise of volleyball or women's basketball with Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese and everybody, you hear all of the complaints, and then people point to that. And they point to, all the social media hits, or they point to the ratings for the playoff, and they go, see, it's as healthy as it's ever been. So I guess it depends on your viewpoint. Is it healthy as it's ever been, or as popular as it's ever been?
It's as popular. Healthy, that would be man, Anthony Kiedis sure is ripped, but is he healthy?
Right.
He's for the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So, you see him, he's, he's in shape, but also, was that done by cocaine and heroin?
Mostly heroin.
Yeah, and does he have massive cholesterol problems?
Yeah, so like you said, that's where I look at college football. You might look at him and go, hey, they're pretty good shit, not bad. They're making money and all that. But are there problems in the bloodstream? There certainly are.
It's also like $1 billion corporation going, we've never made more money. We've never been better, and the employees make crap and they hate it there, but we've never made more money. That's America in a lot of ways. And you say, oh, well, the money's coming in, it must be great. No, not necessarily. And so maybe that's some of what's going on with college sports. The money's bigger than ever. Because it's been allowed to infiltrate more than ever.
Yeah, I mean, look at Amazon. Like, hey, they're getting stuff out faster than ever. But
oh my God, I got to tell a story about that.
But Henry's got to pee in a bottle and not allowed to go to the bathroom.
He's not allowed to stop walking.
I have reading glasses. Paul, you have a pair of reading glasses.
Mm-hmm.
Craig, you have great vision, right? You have contacts, that's right. I have contacts, but I hate wearing the one that's my left eye because it's like this. So I ordered. I had a pair of reading glasses, and the lens popped out, which I put it back in. No problem. I said, I better order an extra pair. I ordered it yesterday afternoon. It arrived at my door last night.
Yeah,
Amazon.
Yeah, we got the warehouse now.
But still, I mean, how much do they have? That's all they have to keep up with it. Like, you go to a grocery store, and let's say you have like a certain salad dressing you like the most. Eventually, they stop having it. Is because not enough people were buying it.
Because they've got
but
numbers.
That's insane, though.
Let's say, like, hey, we sold this many crock pots. We better have this amount of crock pots. So, like, you probably have a system in place that you know what you need bare minimum to have.
Yeah, and
that blew me away, though. That I know that's been going on for more than I realized, but that normally would have been, you might get it within a day or two. Now you get it the same day.
Yeah, it's nuts. Garrett's headset went out the other day, so I ordered this one. Here it came overnight as well.
Did it really?
Which was nice. I appreciate the convenience of it because this particular brand of headset, the Sony one that I like, I can't just walk into a store and get it. I have to order it from online anyway. I've tried to order less stuff from Amazon because their quality has gone down quite a bit when
There's some sketchy stuff.
Well, when they started vertically integrating and said, okay, we want to make sunglasses, so we're going to buy the cheapest sunglass company we can, and then change it from Sunny Day, not Ray-Ban, but like we're going to change it from Sunny Day sunglasses to Amazon sunglasses. Well, Sunny Day was unsuccessful because they sucked.
Yeah.
And so you're like,
like, for example, there's something I need to get. There's 90 different options of it, but I'm glad you guys brought up that.
But hey, I'm happy that my money can send Katy Perry and Gayle King into space.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
right.
I mean, it's what I've always wanted.
All right. So there we are with the Mountain West Pac-12. Hopefully they can iron that out. And you just wonder, will there ever get a time if they get through the settlement, the House settlement? Realignment's never going to stop. It's going to always kind of percolate. But if there ever will be a time where you could have a football or a school year or a sports year, calendar year, and it's just about the games. But there's always going to be a lawsuit. There's always going to be something that is going to flare up because that's just the way it is.
I mean, there's been a lot of just pure BS on the realignment front over the last couple of years. I mean, just unadulterated, BS, but I think you've got to remember that just because you don't necessarily find it interesting, there are a lot of people that find it as a niche, very interesting. And it doesn't matter if they have a team involved or not. They just find the concept interesting. And so I'm partially one of those. we were doing it every day for a while there. So I'll just speak for myself. I got burnt out on it. I don't know about y'all. I mean, after a while, once there was a conclusion reached for the Pac and Bake 12, is like take a break from it. But there are people that find it interesting, just like I have hobbies that I like that other people may not understand, but it's interesting to me. So there's definitely a realignment, love
there's an
out
itch.
there.
There are some ambulance chasers when it comes to that, and there's some that just love.
They just love realignment.
Yeah,
so whatever it is,
and if it helps a school or whatever, or a conference, good for them. Paul Catalina, we got Craig's off the radar. Paul's top 5 in about an hour or so on the story earlier today of Gene Hackman and his wife and their dog being found dead in their home in New Mexico.
All in different rooms. It's very, very peculiar story. But
when I first saw this, I'll be honest with you, I thought it might have been one of those where someone's left the exhaust on in a car in the garage or something like that. Maybe it might have. I don't know.
Maybe it was a gas leak, something like that. But
they're investigating it because it's not normal. They say.
Yeah. No, I get it.
One of the great actors of all time, Gene Hackman. So when we were talking about Hoosiers earlier, Soki, you and I, and look, this is not a knock on Hoosiers.
Well, don't ruin your top 5, though.
No.
Okay.
It's not a knock on Hoosiers. It's a credit to Gene Hackman's career that I can name probably 10 movies above it, or at least, depending on your opinion, that can go toe-to-toe with it, because that's how many good movies that he made, like The French Connection and Crimson Tide and Unforgiven. If you've never seen Unforgiven, he is the most sinister bad guy maybe in the history of cinema. He is so friggin' evil in that movie, and which makes it better because Clint Eastwood was a dude in the movie who was a bad guy before and then decides to be a good guy because he's guilty about his life. And so, there's so many good ones with Gene Hackman. I love The Royal Tenenbaums, which is a really quirky, funny movie. Young Frankenstein, The Replacements.
How old was he? 89? It was 89?
He was 95.
95, and his
years
wife
old.
was in her upper 60s, and of course, forced a dog. One of the things I'll say, you mentioned, did you mention The French Connection?
Yeah.
That was the movie that we watched as a family on our way from San Francisco to Hawaii, on our way to living in Japan when my dad was moved from Vietnam to Tokyo, to the area in Tokyo Air Force bases. Yeah. And that movie was the one on that big, huge, massive plane.
The car chase in that movie has changed car chases ever since then. Unbelievable. I think I'm going to guess, Smokey, that your favorite Gene Hackman might be Crimson Tide.
It is.
Because it overlaps with Denzel.
I just thought that was such a great, like Hunt for Red October and Crimson Tide. I like those movies that are somehow they're military based, but that Crimson Tide was amazing.
And here's why I think Crimson Tide's one of his best characters. He's the antagonist of the movie, but he's not a bad guy. He's doing what he thinks is right.
He's
doing what he thinks is right. He's not a bad guy. He just gets caught in his own,
power?
Yeah, exactly.
Ego and power.
Yeah. All
right, Craig, and off the radar, and there's a little of an interesting nugget with that. We'll have Mickey Spagnola about 5:25 or 5:30. But I have something, a contraption that we might get to that I actually brought to the studio that's 60 or so years old. Off the radar, Craig Smoak, and that is, TCU, by the way. We'll look at their schedule. That's next on 365 Sports. Marco's Pizza. Pizza lovers get it. You have a chance. It's the fastest growing pizza brand in America. 1,200 and more locations, prime territories available. If you ever say, I need to do something else with my life. Do you want to own a franchise or franchises? You can with Marco's Pizza. Bring your market what you want. Waco didn't have any just a few years ago. Now they have 5 stores. Bob Mox, the owner, been in the pizza business all of his life. He's been a part of the previous really nice pizza brands and learned from where he was, and from a delivery guy to someone making the pizza to a general manager to now owns 5 stores in Waco, including Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, Robinson, and also in Hewitt. And it's good pizza. I mentioned that YouTube that Katie Rader sent me a podcast about grading or eating or ranking the best pizza brands, and I didn't know where it was going to end up. I didn't know where Marco's was going to be, or 7, 8, or 9, or 12 other pizza brands, and they were very honest about the crust or the sauce or the cheese or whatever the ingredients. Marco's Pizza was ranked number 1 out of all of that from somebody that has a podcast on food that is very, very popular. Marco's Pizza, 5 locations in Waco. Pizza lovers get it.
In our logo and advertising, we say we are people that you can count on. What does that mean? It starts with providing a quality vehicle and quality service at a fair price. But it also means we do what we say we will do, and we treat people fairly with respect. It starts by hiring great people, good local folks who work hard with a caring attitude. Our employees are the real reason we are people that you can count on. Put us to the test and see for yourself that at Richard Carr Motors, we are people you can count on.
Parenting is full of surprises.
You never know what to expect.
So after our son was born, I called my Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent to set up a life insurance policy in case something happened to me.
Sawyer is now 2.
And we'll soon have a sister. There's no one else I would trust with protecting my family.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow @GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student-athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine now has 2 locations to serve you. The original on Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street and the brand new spot in downtown Waco at 600 Franklin Avenue. If you're looking for the best in craft beers or local Texas bourbons, then the original is the place to be. And for the latest trends and online phenomenons, head downtown to the Franklin location. Either way, you're going to get the same great variety, customer service, and speedy experience. Check out both locations on their Facebook and Instagram pages, Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street, and now downtown on Franklin Avenue.
This is Craig Smoak's Off the Radar, presented by Alliance Bank. They take pride in making banking easy. AllianceBankTexas.com.
Welcome into Off the Radar here on 365 Sports, taking a look at a few stories off the radar, hence the title there, Tuesdays and Thursdays at around this time of the show. And I want to start off with a little anecdote. We were talking a day or two ago about left-handed people. I'm a lefty. I brought up the fact that there are certain cultures, there are people here in America that based on how they were raised, it's very taboo to be a left-handed person. In some parts of the world, it's looked at as being like evil, like you're something's wrong with you, and to the point where they train you out of it because you can't be left-handed. And you guys had no idea that occurred. I was kind of surprised by that, but it's very common. And I don't know if this is just the tech overlords, the tech billionaires, and their ability to listen in on everything we do. So you mention like one thing and all of a sudden it's like, here's your recommended on every social media app is suddenly mentioning this movie you hadn't said anything about in 10 years. But I fell across a video and I don't remember, I was watching I don't drum or anything, but I came across a video of some rock star that led me down the rabbit hole on YouTube. And somehow or another, I ended up watching a video on Ringo Starr, Beatles drummer, and how he had a very unique playing style. And in one of these videos, Ringo explained why he has a unique playing style. And I just wanted to pass this along because it puts a bow on what we were talking about the other day. But here's probably the most famous drummer of all time, arguably one of the most famous drummers of all time, most famous band of all time, certainly. And he said in an old video that the reason why he plays so different, and it's taken there's interviews with Dave Grohl and Sheila E. and all these Stuart Copeland, all these all-timer drummers of how it took them a second to figure out why they couldn't quite mimic Ringo, and they didn't understand it. And the reason why they didn't understand it is because he played a little bit differently because he was left-handed. And he said in one of these videos, when asked about why he plays so uniquely, and it takes people a second to pick up on, he said, I'm a left-handed, right-handed player. When I was born, I was left-handed, but my grandmother felt I was overpowered by witches and made me write with my right hand.
Oh, my God.
So y'all think I'm playing.
No.
There was – he also went on a different video, asked the same question, and he said about his grandmother when making him switch from being left-handed to right-handed, my grandmother decided I had the devil in me and forced me to – right with my right hand, and so basically he still plays left-handed, but it's just a kit set up for a right-handed person. So he has a little bit of a difference in how he moves across the set, and that's what people always can't figure out initially, and then they realize, oh, he's left-handed, playing right-handed basically. But yeah, the reason why is because his grandmother thought he had the devil in him because he was left-handed.
I can just see it like now, 1966, like, Ringo, why you play the drums like that? It's like, grandmother thought I had the devil in me, like, oh my gosh.
Yeah,
I honestly never in 65 plus years ever heard that ever about left-handers. Ever.
Well, I grew up with it. I grew up not being able to use scissors throughout school because they were all right-handed scissors.
That's true.
The only thing I did know, like, I knew from The Simpsons because Ned Flanders owned a store called the Leftorium for left-handed people. Like, that's where I knew that everything, like, I didn't think, like, I never thought, because I'm right-handed, you just use scissors, that I never thought that you had to get left-handed scissors or things like that were specifically designed for it until I saw that episode of The Simpsons where Ned Flanders opened up the Leftorium.
The left-handed store, yeah. I mean, there's probably something actually like that somewhere. I'm sure there's some town that's got a left-handed store or something, but yeah, approximately 90% of people are right-handed, but there are very much people like Ringo Starr who are forced to do things right-handed. I never got forced. It was just like, here's scissors, and you're going to have to make it work. And so I did to some degree, but I like being left-handed. I when I found out it was like almost an evil thing for some people, I just found that so bizarre. But people have their weird, back in the day type of beliefs and taboos and all that kind of stuff. So it's just... I guess Google was listening in and recommended that video to me because of the comments we made the other day. So there you go. Ringo Starr's grandmother thought he had the devil in him because he was left-handed, but it worked out okay for him. He just made, more money than any drummer ever, probably.
Emery is wanting to get into sales in his life. And so I'm going to give him the project of finding, I sent him one that I Googled, a left-handed store to sponsor Craig.
Hey, I'd be all for that.
Yeah, that's why I think it would be great. Find a left-handed store that will sponsor Craig.
I know he's got my back. So, yeah, I would appreciate that. But shout out to all the lefties there. All right, so couple of different other stories, but that was about as off the radar as we can start off with, I think. I guess let's go ahead and get your first down thing because I don't know how long this is going to take, or do you want to do it at the very end?
By the way, one more thing on the left-handed. That's up to you. It's up to you. It's your segment. My nephew is left-handed and just might be one of the top 10 best ball strikers I've ever seen in my life playing golf. Kid's a natural, could care less, pisses me off.
Yeah, I mean, we're smooth with it. No doubt about it.
I brought that up yesterday, though. It is. It's true. Go ahead and mention it, and then because I don't want to, we got time here, but go ahead and mention it, and maybe I'll go around to the front desk and show people what I have.
Yeah, so, I mean, the NFL is working on moving away potentially from first down chains and yardage chains to measure first downs. Mike Garofalo reported yesterday that the league is moving to Hawkeye virtual technology to help with first down calls in 2025. They plan on using the tech as their primary way to determine if a ball crosses the first down line. There will still be a chain gang. They will be backups, however. They'll be on the sidelines, but they will basically be a backup measurement now at this point. Garofalo put out a graphic that showed some of the details of exactly how all of this is going to work that had, for example, they did, they're reporting on the studies on the 2024 season and found that 12 measurements per week were taken on average, and that there was a 55% drop in administration time versus chains. So you went from 75 seconds for a measurement, which happened 12 times a week, to then 30 seconds for a measurement. So you save 45 seconds on a measurement. So then in 2025, part of the graph that was showed to the NFL football operations, as part of the offseason, they're finalizing these procedures. Preseason, they're going to test things out and do all that. But it did have that one graphic that showed you that there is a 45-second difference between this and the chains. So there's no vote on the issue required. The electronic system will require officials on the field to still put the ball in place. There won't be like a robot out there that's doing that as well. So the officials will still be involved in placing it. But the virtual measurement tool, Hawkeye, will assess if a ball has made it past the line to gain or not. And so, yeah, they've tested this out. It wasn't good to go for last season, but they're moving forward to see how this all works. And, what do you guys think about – I mean, we've talked about balls and strikes being called by robots, and we've seen MLB sort of testing that out. This appears to be more accurate than doing it the human route, which I think we can watch any game and go, that dude looks like he moved it a half a yard the other direction. We see that way too often. But, a lot of emphasis placed on this with the big Josh Allen play and the marking in the AFC Championship
that's what's
game.
sparking this more than anything else.
Yeah, and so that controversial call is part of what's being used now as a prime example of why this is needed. But yeah, they're going to use technology to spot the ball now. What do y'all think?
I'm all for it.
I'm 100% all for it. I don't know if that's because whatever they do with inside the football or whatever, 100% all for it because. Late in the game when there's what is it? Said no blood, no foul. You can't make that call late in the game. Watch NFL games and watch how they just basically just whoosh with a first down. Whether somebody picked up the first down or not, I think they need to put that in check too. And it's something that in my second oldest brother, Michael, called me yesterday evening after we saw this story about what the NFL is attempting to do, and I hope that they get it done.
I mean, they're doing it. It's for 2025, so they're going to have this new technology, and I suppose if now's the time, you want to show whatever it is you want to show here.
All right, I'm not sure how I'm going to do the audio.
We did not do any pre-pro, which is why I asked beforehand about how we were going to do this, but
we got time. Amber, you want to help me out?
He is preparing.
Let me see. Where are we on camera? Okay. All right. So my grandfather, my mother's father, Pop, in the 1960s came up with a device to measure first downs rather than just like you still see even to this day.
I put it up on the table if at all possible,
This is something that I've kept through the various moves all throughout the country. His idea was... Okay, you have the chains, right? You still have the chains. You have these flags that you put in the ground where the first down is at the start of a down and where he's got multiple flags, where it is at the end of the ground, and you have these stakes right here.
We sure he wasn't a vampire hunter?
Yeah, well, he might have been. He's left-handed. But you had the stakes, and so what he divided, it's patented. And the name of this, and I owe Scotty Swingler, shout out to you because you said you were amazingly interested in this. So, for example, this is the stake, no different than like you would put in the first down now. You have the link at the end of it, and then you would, on top of the stake, you would have the flag, okay, for where they start the down, either side of the field. Now, Emery, if you'll hold that. Then this. You can't quite see it. S1422 _. It is the reticular, S1422, the gridiron, the grid-eye. This is a laser. It's like a laser, a scope, and a rifle, or a gun, or a whatever. And inside of it, you can go, based on what is in these sticks, you can measure what really is a first down. Now, there's a couple of pieces missing. For example, he said the ridicule glass and retaining spring ring is missing, which would go inside of here, inside of this, basically this, what do you call it? A scope.
Yeah.
And so he made this because he got tired. This is in the 60s, and I've been hauling this around forever and ever. And the one question I don't quite have, and again, here's the link, is exactly how you would, with this, into what would they shoot to make sure that it's a first down. But he tried to come up with this in the 1960s. Pop, Mirabeau B. Lamar, my mother's father, lived in the East Coast forever and ever. But it's called, I don't know, Garrett, I don't think I can get it.
Not on the microphone.
Yeah, it's called the grid. Is it right here? No, it's not. You're good.
Yeah, you don't have enough light. Okay. There's not enough light.
But it's got the metal patent, Precision Sports, Inc., the name of his company, Washington, D.C., the Grid-Eye, patent number 2335066, and other patents pending for him. And this is what he was trying to do back
Microphone.
in the 1960s.
Microphone.
Huh?
Microphone.
Yeah. He was trying to do this back in the 1960s. I kept this when our parents passed away. I brought it to Texas. It's been wherever I've been. Found this in the storage after that story popped. My oldest brother, Michael, called me yesterday evening. Hey, David. And I knew exactly what he was going to ask me about. And so I brought this out of storage. It's not the greatest visual here, but I thought this was pretty damn cool.
Wow. Maybe we can start a competing company if the patent's still active.
No, it's just a typical Smoak story. He couldn't have been the one to nail the first down markers. He had to have, and then make the millions off of it. We had to have the idea that.
So here's what, you'd have this would be on the stake, and you would be right at wherever the first down marker, laser to the other side of the field, and you would be able to tell if it was a first down. So, Scotty Swingler, I hope it was worth you watching the segment. I know you were excited about it, but there we are. Thanks, Emery. Appreciate it.
All right, so there you go. Thanks, Pop, on your old first down system. Can't wait to inherit all that. Try to get around. If you were to discover that, you would have thought of it was like relics from war or something like that. You got like chains and spears and like all sorts of like a gun-looking thing there. You'd have thought, like, if I didn't know any better, if I didn't know the story of the first down markers, I would have thought that like, are those World War I relics or something like that. But no, I mean, he clearly put a lot of effort into it. I'll say that. I mean, and
he was a brilliant man.
Yeah,
he was an incredible. Not just because he's my grandfather. He was brilliant, and I remember he used to take us, the grandkids, out to a local football field and try it and work it. And he got the patent, and so I think it's worth $62.3 million, and I'll be in touch with Roger Goodell in the National Football League.
Fantastic. Sounds great. Well, yeah, I mean, that's cool to see, and I mean, for a long time, I mean, I actually admire, instead of just bitching on whatever online Twitter was back then, he actually went out and tried to, he wasn't just like standing in the middle of the town square, just first downs are BS. Somebody needs to do something about it. He just went out and he tried to do something about it, so I appreciate that. All right, I'll close it out with a couple of other notes here. Travis Kelce is coming back in 2025. There was some question about this, mostly because he's Taylor Swift's boyfriend, so there's like this extra microscope that's placed on him. Also because he's a Hall of Fame tight end and a right-hand man to the greatest football player in the world right now, and very good in his own right. So there was some questions about, especially the lackluster showing in the Super Bowl, of whether or not, at 35 years old and with a very successful podcast and very successful significant other and all of that, like, what did life hold in store for him? But Travis Kelce is coming back to the Chiefs after taking a look at retirement. So there you go. The big mystery is solved for those wondering about his future. And former Cincinnati Bearcat, by the way,
absolutely.
as well.
He's a great tight end. And, yeah, he did seem to be overwhelmed a little bit. And, hey, you never know all of a sudden when you just fall off the map. He's still important, has some big catches, but in that game he was pretty much not a factor.
No, I mean, yeah, like 40 yards or something like that, but nothing that was all that substantial.
No, but I think that, I mean, there's probably an end game for him here in this, but he said Super Bowl week, he's coming back. I mean, I think that, there was some thought, like, what if he wins? Are there any more else left?
Well, then they got beat the way they did, so it brought it all back up of, like, are you sure you're coming back? And so I guess he's, like, stamped it out entirely now because there was some question after the way that game went. So he's coming back. And I think we're kind of running short here, so I'll maybe save some things over. But
you're okay if you got
a couple more stories.
Well,
we got Mickey and the schedule thing.
So, we have to do TCU schedule.
That's what I'm saying.
Give one more story. Go ahead.
I know where we are. I got it. So I'll wrap it up with this. It's just funny how the world works sometimes, and it's just so, I guess, refreshing sometimes to just see how the veneers get torn down and you see just how things really are. I am not against this. I just find it funny that because regimes have changed and a couple years have gone by, like, so many corporations have gone from, certain business practices to now, like, we don't have to do that anymore. There's different people in charge now. Like, there's just like this complete flip of the way you need to operate because of just who's in charge at this point. But maybe this has something to do with that. And I don't mean specifically, I just mean a lot of what we saw 3 and 4 years ago from companies like Target and the, various hiring initiatives and things like that. They're all backing off of it now because it's not as on the forefront. And you see the hypocrisy. Like, however you feel about it, I find the hypocrisy just funny to see it out in the open.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if this is really hypocrisy, but I feel like this kind of falls in line somewhat of just how opinions change over time. But the Buccaneers are reinstating John Gruden into their team Ring of Honor, they announced earlier today. They announced that he will be reinstated, saying John Gruden was initially inducted in the Buccaneers Ring of Honor based on his many accomplishments during his 7 seasons as our head coach, and he remains a significant figure in the history of our franchise. Upon further reflection, we have decided to reinstate him into the Buccaneers Ring of Honor. He was removed from their ROH in 2021 after a story by the Wall Street Journal and New York Times that alleged his use of racist terms and homophobic terms and misogynistic terms that were in emails that were some of them to Bruce Allen, formerly a part of the Washington franchise. And so he resigned from his role as Las Vegas Raiders head coach halfway through the 2021 season. And so he was taken away, and now here he's got a show with Barstool, right? Is the show he's with
Barstool.
And he's kind of getting maybe some of his mojo back, I guess you would say. And as a result, the Buccaneers are now deciding to reinstate him into their Ring of Honor. So times change, I guess, from 4 years ago and their thought process to now. So I didn't really feel any type of way about it. I haven't thought much about John Gruden, but it just showed me kind of amidst all of the other things that seemed to be changing. That was another story that maybe you don't see in other years.
Yeah, to me, some of that stuff was, look, John Gruden messed up, clearly.
Yes.
He wasn't going to be, like, the biggest thing about him getting fired and coaching was it was going to be really hard for him to reestablish credibility within his own locker room.
Correct.
And then any other locker room, given the fact of the things that he said. And just probably not worth trying to, like, you have a guy who has to now prove himself to everybody for however long it takes to do that. The NFL's not about that. But when it comes to, like, taking his name out of the Ring of Honor and all that, like, I mean, come on. Like, they're like, nobody's, like, looking up there going, oh, my gosh, John Gruden wrote some questionable emails. He shouldn't be up there. I think that was silly. And that's where it, like, comes beyond the pale of, this isn't like when we renamed military bases after people who weren't Confederate generals. That's like we were naming military bases after losing generals. Not a good idea. And so bottom line was, this is a totally different thing than that overall.
My thought was this, and I'm not as smart as everybody else by any means, but I always wondered about when you cancel something or eliminate something, are you also then eliminating history, whether it's good or bad? That was always my concern. John Gruden reinstated in the Tampa Bay Ring of Honor. Does it affect me or anyone else? Maybe it does if you're a Bucs fan, but glad they made the decision one way or the other.
Yeah, it's just interesting. They're backing off of their decision from a few years ago, so he's back in the Ring of Honor, and so Bucs fans react accordingly. But there you go. There's a few things off the radar.
All right, Craig, thank you very much. And when we come back, we'll look at the TCU schedule. Their 2025 schedule. Break it down. We'll have that. Mickey Spagnola at the bottom of the hour. Paul's Top 5 just around the corner. And this is 365 Sports. Waco Custom Marketplace. I had one of our viewers, I won't mention his name, but he bought a steak at a regular store. Big tomahawk ribeye. And when he undid the wrapping and was about to cook it on the grill, didn't like the way it looked, didn't like the way it smelled. It was spoiled. I guess that's what he's telling me. So he threw it away and said that I'm always going to buy for the rest of when I need a steak, I'm going to go to a legitimate, real butcher shop. I have one here in Waco, Waco Custom Marketplace, the Bauer family, and they have been distributing products to restaurants for years and decades, and then opened up this full-service, although kind of a locally owned country store called Waco Custom Marketplace. Full-service butcher shop with pork, poultry, and seafood. They've got a full-service bakery with all the sweets and pies and treats and kolaches and bread. Every day, baked bread and kolaches. And then, of course, also at the butcher shop, back to the end, it's hamburger beef ground hamburger patties. It could be a brisket, tri-tip, and yes, a bunch of beautiful steaks. From boneless or bone-in ribeyes to New York strips to much more. Sirloin steak, if you want that too, they have it. Waco Custom Marketplace, hometown grocery store where you could order, crawfish bags, 30-pound sacks for $4.20 a pound. That's gone down yet again, hasn't it? From last week, it did. $4.20 a pound. Call to order. Make your orders. It's already Thursday past noon, so it can't do it today. But next week by noon Thursday, pick up your live crawfish sacks, 30-pound sacks in the afternoon on Friday or Saturday. It's Waco Custom Marketplace, your hometown grocery store at Lake Erie Drive in Waco.
Automatic Chef is your local vending, office coffee, and micro market provider, delivering outstanding service to break rooms all over Central Texas for over 50 years. Automatic Chef brings the best products to your location at the best prices. With hundreds of choices in fresh food, coffee, snacks, and drinks, let Automatic Chef tailor a break room solution to your needs. Make break time great again with Automatic Chef. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco, or online at automaticchef.com.
Baylor alumni are more than 160,000 strong. When we all join hands to support our university, we don't just move the needle, we move mountains. Working together, we create life-changing opportunities for students on the field, in the classroom, in the laboratory, and in life for generations to come. So get connected, get involved. Learn how at baylor.edu/alumni.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
Petty Clinic Men's Healthcare in Woodway is now proud to offer you men an exceptional weight management body sculpting product called semaglutide, also known as Ozempic or Wegovy. Semaglutide is an FDA-approved weight management medication. Once-a-week injections of this powerful medication offers an average body fat weight loss of 20% within the first year of treatment. In addition to body sculpting, semaglutide also normalizes blood sugars and has the clinical research proof of reducing blood pressure, cholesterol, stroke, and heart attack risk. We're back, 365 Sports. We appreciate your time. If you have not yet hit the like and subscribe button, we would appreciate you do that as we continue to grow. 365 Sports here, taking you up for about the next 45 minutes until around 6 o'clock Central. All right, so we have been looking at the Big 12 schedules, released the Tuesday, the week of the Super Bowl. We have TCU today, Texas Tech tomorrow, which is also a day. We have Texas Tech football coach Joey McGuire, Craig Smoak, Paul Catalina, David Smoak, and Craig, take us away with the Horned Frogs.
Yeah, y'all better enjoy this segment while it lasts because it's about to end here in about 4 days. There's a big chunk of time you're not going to have any longer, but it's been fun to kind of comb through these, and we'll obviously get more detailed when we get into the later months of this year. In summer, we'll start to kind of really break the teams down, but in terms of just the schedule and taking a look at everybody, TCU today, and TCU, according to their own press release on their schedule released a couple weeks ago, one of just 2 schools nationally that will play 11 P4 opponents in 2024. So 11 Power 4 conference opponents for the Horned Frogs. They were one of only 3 to play 11 last season, so this is not that different for them, but now just one of 2. Also, just 6 home games. So they have a 6-6 schedule. But they did say in their write-up on this that beginning next year, they will have 8 home games rather than 6, and they will have a minimum of 7 home games every single year thereafter. Everybody's starting to get to scrounge these home games. I'm just wondering, how's this going to work? Because not everybody is going to be able to have 7 and 8 home games, but it does feel like everybody's starting to kind of gimmick up their schedules. And, this is the absolute last time we're doing 6-6. But they say they're going to have at least 7 home games every year from here, I guess, until eternity. So 6-6, the schedule for this season, and TCU gets started on a very interesting note. Week 1, Monday night, will be game number 1 for TCU, September the 1st, and on the road. So think about that. On the road on a Monday night to start the season, and you will be in Chapel Hill, North Carolina to take on Bill Belichick and his UNC Tar Heels. So North Carolina right out of the gates for TCU. And they take a bye week the very next week. They play North Carolina on a Monday night, and then it's straight into a bye week. So let's just start there. That's a pretty sexy matchup that wouldn't have been nearly as sexy if, let's be honest, Mac Brown was still the head coach. That's one that would have a storyline of Mac and, playing a team from Texas that he's familiar with. And, maybe North Carolina's got a little bit of preseason buzz. But now with Bill Belichick, that's going to have a lot of buzz, especially being a game so early in the season like that.
Yeah, and it's a big matchup theoretically. I mean, we don't really know anything about North Carolina or what Bill Belichick's going to do. Nope. How the offense is going to look, how the defense is going to look, if it's going to be anything like the Patriots, if he's decided to do something else. Other than that, it's hard to even know any of that stuff. But still, credit to the schedule, for them doing it for both those schools. But I would guess first round out of the box that's a pretty likely win for them, considering they're further down the line than North Carolina is. I don't care how many Super Bowls Bill Belichick has. This is a different thing.
Well, you know what? In 23, TCU opened up against Deion, won his first game at Colorado, right? And lost that game. And so 2 years later, they open up against North Carolina in Chapel Hill. These are the games that I hope that we never lose. And I know there are some schools committed to continuing, especially Michigan, Texas, Ohio State, et cetera. Although Ohio State's schedule last year was a little bit barren in September. That you get these kinds of games that may not be blue bloods, but they're really good, strong Power 4 schools.
Yeah, no doubt. And I just want to go back to him for just 1 second, please. What do you think somebody who's just tuning in thinks is on the table right now? I just wonder, they're just what is that? All right, anyways, so week 2. Yeah, no kidding.
There's a lot going on.
This is a muscle gun, by the way. Yeah, I wish. All right.
Yeah, so there you go. North Carolina, week 1. Week 2, bye week. And, they got to have that extra time to get ready for their home opener. I will say that game, Belichick's first, it will also be in Chapel Hill. So you are hitting the road for week number 1. So there is that. But then week 2, bye week. Week 3, you'll have an extra week to prepare for your home opener and Abilene Christian. So there's a week 3 ACU. And then in week 4, closing out the non-conference slate with the SMU Mustangs, the 104th battle for the Iron Skillet. And this will be at Amon Carter Stadium in Fort Worth. So there you go, SMU to close it out. So SMU and North Carolina, 2 ACC schools for TCU to tangle with in the non-conference. After SMU, they will travel to Tempe to take on Arizona State, the reigning Big 12 football champions. That's how they will open up conference play. The following week, October the 4th, Colorado in Fort Worth. The following week after that, Saturday, October 11th, week 7, they'll travel to Kansas State to take on the Wildcats there. The following week, another Saturday, week 8, they will get Baylor at home in the big rivalry game. It's not the Bluebonnet Battle. I don't care what the official title is. The rivalry game will take place on Saturday, October 18th in Fort Worth. Then week 9, Saturday, October 25th, they go to Morgantown to take on West Virginia. And then finally, in Week 10, they get a bye week. So they open Week 1 at North Carolina, Bill Belichick's first game, get a break right after that. They go ACU at home, SMU at home, at Arizona State, Colorado at home, at K-State, Baylor at home, at West Virginia.
This is a gauntlet of a schedule.
On paper it is, yeah.
I mean, absolutely a gauntlet. I mean, when you've got two playoff teams back-to-back, not to mention you open up with Bill Belichick, so it's not like, the whole world's not going to be watching that one on a Monday night, so you're going to have, this is good, I guess it's good news, bad news for TCU. You are, throughout the first 2 months of the season, going to have maybe more eyeballs on you television-wise than you ever have before because you have Bill Belichick. Then you're playing a rivalry game against a playoff team. Then you're playing against the defending conference champion. Then you're playing against Dion again.
Mm-hmm.
Then you're playing at Kansas State that's a good team. Baylor is a huge rivalry game, and that should be a pretty good one based on paper right now.
Yeah, if they both hold up their end of the bargain,
The worst two games in this are Abilene Christian, who, remember, pushed Texas Tech to the brink of insanity.
They lost their quarterback, though.
A year ago, yes. Yeah. But even still, they did that. And then West Virginia, who by this point in the season might be a little bit, in a groove.
Yeah, it'll be fall weather. Maybe Rich Rod's got Morgantown rocking like days of old at that point. I don't know. But, yeah, that's a on paper. That's a tough stretch there. So then Week 10, they get their second bye week. They can finally take a breath after that little bit of a gauntlet. They turn around and return on Saturday, November the 8th. They get Iowa State at home. Like, they ticked off all of the best teams from last year boxes.
No,
basically.
they really did.
And then to further prove that point, Week 12, they go on the road to BYU on Saturday, November the 15th. So first visit to Provo since 2009. And there was a college game day there as TCU was top 10 at the time. Andy Dalton was the quarterback. And they went and beat up a nearly top 15. They were number 16 ranked BYU. But, yeah, so TCU going to Provo for the first time in about 15 years. And then they will close it out with two games that, on paper, you would think maybe lighten up compared to what we've been talking about for like the last 10 weeks, basically. Mm-hmm. But maybe not. They go to Houston on Saturday, November 22nd. And, I mean, who the heck knows what Houston looks like at that point in the season. And then Week 14, close out the regular season. They will be at home to take on Cincinnati. And that will be the first trip for Cincinnati to Fort Worth since 2003. Unique, and that's a good road trip for you Cincy fans. I think Fort Worth's a fun town. I think we'd all agree on that. That'd be one of the better spots to maybe go. Although at the end of the year, maybe you're like already a coaching search in at that point. If you're Cincinnati, I don't know. But there you go. That's the schedule. Close it out with a home game against Cincinnati. So 6 home, 6 away, a Monday nighter to start things against North Carolina. All the rest of the games are on Saturdays. But man alive, you're going to some interesting places to play, and even your home games are a bit tough. 9 bowl teams last year. Coaching changes at North Carolina, but 9 of their 12 games are against bowl teams.
I'll make a recommendation for Cincy fans. Look, that Thanksgiving weekend, okay, that they're going to be playing here at Fort Worth. Come on down. Go to see the Cowboys. Either hype up the whole world by a Thanksgiving win or be terribly disappointing. Yeah. Then take Friday, have a day, go somewhere, stay somewhere like the Gaylord or the Omni, somewhere cool. And then on Saturday, you can go on over and experience Sam and Carter.
Yeah,
that's a pretty cool little sports weekend I just made for you.
Yeah, no, that's not a bad idea. You can go.
The Mavericks might be playing on Friday, and that'll be a super easy ticket next year.
I don't know who that is. I don't know who you're referring to.
It's a rodeo team.
Yeah. But no, I mean, you go Stockyards, you can go Billy Bob, you can do all sorts of things in Fort Worth. So, yeah, there you go. There's the schedule. Because of who they do have, the teams they don't have, they don't play Texas Tech, which that just feels wrong. Like, I don't know how you don't have – I mean, I know why you don't, but I think that's a mistake to not have all the Texas teams round robining each year. So no Texas Tech, no Arizona, no Kansas, no Utah, no UCF, no Oklahoma State. So perhaps they meet one of those teams in the Big 12 championship game, but those are the ones they missed. So of that list, I mean, Texas Tech is definitely the one that's expected to be the best on paper of those schools.
That they skip.
The rest of them, I mean, Kansas might be pretty good. Utah could be pretty good, but we really have no idea. So, yeah, there you go. There's the TCU schedule. And to me, this is one of the tougher ones we've talked about at this point.
I kept wondering, okay, they're going to play. Oh, no, they got this team. I agree.
I think it's maybe the toughest one we've talked about just in terms of you don't have 3 bye weeks like some teams have. Monday night to start things is kind of weird, but they will have, to Paul's point a few moments ago, they will have some good TV games. Like if they're worth the salt and the teams they're playing are, then, playing Belichick, playing Dion, your rivalry game that normally is insanely crazy against Baylor. I mean, there's some fun games. This is a good schedule. It's a tough schedule, but it's a very entertaining schedule if you're a TCU fan.
And I would encourage anybody who's never watched the Skillet game, SMU and TCU.
Oh, yeah, that gets nuts.
To watch that one.
And it's more intense than ever before.
I'll have to show you all I have to do to get Steven Simcox worked up is mention the 3 letters SMU. And he just
he
drives
hates him like
insane.
Kim Coulter does. Yeah. By the way, Abilene Christian was 2 rounds deep in the FCS playoffs too. They were 9-5, and as you mentioned, they do lose McIver, but they were pretty good too. And you got to be careful with them early on in the season. It's a heck of a schedule. I think it is the best. I think it is what looks to be based on results from a year ago, which doesn't always translate, but it looks to be. Yeah, I kept waiting for. Okay, there's Kansas State. Oh, the Baylor, Iowa State, BYU. So
there's really not too much of a break where you get a couple teams that are low end of the totem pole. There's really not that on that schedule, and will be interesting as well to see how that goes, because if it goes sideways, there is a new athletic director. And so I don't care who you are. If there's a new athletic director, I don't think you always feel completely 100% secure. And, after the slide of last year, Sonny Dykes is worn on a few TCU fans, I think it's fair to say. They're not in total love, and I'm not saying he's on the hot seat at this point, but I do think that, like, if they don't play a little bit better this year, they get off to a bad start, then you could really find yourself in some trouble. And then you get a lot of chirping going on potentially. But I think they'll be pretty good, especially with Hoover back. He's a stud, so I'm excited to see this. This is a fun schedule. Some cool road trips and some big-time games.
By the way, Mike Buddy will join us sometime in March. We've already confirmed that interview, the TCU athletic director, and he was at West Point, which for the last 5 years, as what he did there as the AD for the cadets. When we come back, Mickey Spagnola, any thoughts, anything that he has heard, chirping, whatever, when it comes to the NFL draft? Also, the fact that their young defensive lineman might be about to be wrapped up with a new contract. Osa
Odigizua.
And he too, yep.
I got one note from Ross Dellinger just now.
Okay.
He said Big 12 presidents and athletic directors today reviewed bids from 3 finalists in the league's pursuit of a capital partner.
Oh.
Firms are proposing to infuse millions to schools. Redbird Capital emerged as the leader. And now this website, man, it just skipped out on me where I was. But, so they're, I guess, looking at bids for capital partners according to Ross Dellinger, and there are 3 finalists. So there you go with that.
All right.
Private equity action for the Big 12, it looks like.
Of course, we'll be at Big 12 Pro Days. We mentioned that earlier in the middle of March up in Frisco at the Star. So that's good. There's always something going on, and so, of course, we'll try to discuss that as we move on. When we come back, Mickey Spagnola, DallasCowboys.com, and this is 365 Sports.
One size fits all. That may be all right for an adjustable belt or cheap sunglasses. But when it comes to your financial needs, no one wants a one-size-fits-all strategy. Cam Heathcott, your Edward Jones financial advisor, knows that his most important goals are yours. That's why we take the time to understand your needs. Knowing you, that's how Edward Jones makes sense of investing. Cam Heathcott in Conroe at 936-756-7717. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Do you or your kids get nervous about going to the dentist? Stonewood Dental, Dr. Steve Childress, he can help.
I've spent a career taking care of patients who as children had bad experiences, and now they're adults that hate going to the dentist. If I get a kid at 3 years old and they come every 6 months and it's a happy experience, it's normal for them. Now they have an accident at 6 or 7 or 8 at school. Now they have a broken tooth or a trauma. And they have to come here. They're used to lights. They're used to water in their mouth. They're used to experience. They already trust us. It's amazing what we can do with that kid without it being a negative thing. But if I see a 6 or 7 or 8-year-old that's never been to the dentist, and now they have a trauma or an unfortunate unexpected toothache, it's harder to do that for that kid and it not be somewhat of a negative experience. So bottom line is I try to teach kids and adults and teenagers and everybody.
We are back on 365 Sports. A couple of nuggets going on with our commercial breaks, but we'll get that ironed out. By the way, Garrett Ross running the mothership. Andrew is trying to be Denzel Washington in Crimson Tide on the day Gene Hackman passed away in the last 24 days to take care of captaining this ship, by the way. Emery Winters here working on 365 Sports tonight at 10:30 on the CW. There's our good friend, Mickey Spagnola, DallasCowboys.com. You have been to the Combine before, and can you, it's a bunch of stuff, right? A bunch of energy. Can you kind of describe, as someone who's been to it, what you actually have seen before? Because I know that there's a lot of coverage from it.
Well, I think when I was there, we didn't get to see anything, right? They didn't. There was no TV coverage of the Combine back in the day. There was no getting to sit in the stadium to watch what everybody filmed. So to me, the benefit of the Combine is not so much the workouts. I mean, they've got so much tape on these guys. They've watched them actually play football. I think the key thing for teams, and especially even now, is the fact that they get to interview the players, and it's quick. You don't get them for long, but I think I read somewhere where the Cowboys had 35 to 40 guys scheduled for interviews over the week, and I think that's probably the biggest benefit. Maybe you didn't get a chance to talk to a bunch of these guys at the Senior Bowl. And you want to follow up and get to know them better before you bring guys in for the 30 visits. So to me, from an organizational standpoint, the interviews are invaluable, especially when you can get 3 or 4 of your people in with one guy and see how he handles it. I mean, this is a job interview, right? And and see how guys react to it. I mean, if you can't handle an interview, what happens when you're playing in front of 70,000 people?
Mickey, Osa Odigizua, I mean, there's a little bit of heat out there that they might get something done with him. That would be tremendous for them to do, just because he is a player on the rise and getting into, if they had made the decision to let him get in free agency, like, that's pretty much saying goodbye to a guy that you really like. And I know that Washington would have loved to get a talk with him. So if they can get this done, how big is that?
Yeah, I think that's got to be the first priority, because really, other than 2 guys that are on the practice squad, there's only one more defensive tackle under contract, and it's Mozzie Smith. And Osa did himself a huge favor by basically having a career year. And yeah, it's a need that the Cowboys had. And even if you decided to draft one in the first couple days, you still, that wouldn't have been enough. So yeah, the defensive tackle position, I think, is very important, especially in Matt Eberflus's defense. So if you get him done, I think that was probably the first of many priorities they have to take care of, or try to take care of, before free agency begins on March 12th.
Mickey, of the players who were injured, of course, Overshown had the just horrible injury. And obviously, Trayvon Diggs had a pretty bad injury too. Which of those players will probably not be available for some time until maybe October or during the season once it begins?
Well, I think first of all, with Overshone, and he's kind of bracing for this. I think it's probably automatic that he ends up to start training camp on PUP, physically unable to perform. But you got to do that with guys to have them eligible to be on non-active PUP when the season starts. And listening to him and talking to the Cowboys trainers and things, it sounds like he probably will start the season. Now, Pup used to be you had to miss the first 6 games. Now it's the first 4 games. And I think when you get within 1 game of being eligible to back, you can start practicing, and then you have like 5 weeks to decide if you're going to activate the guy. So I think he's one guy that you probably count on that won't be there for the season opener. Yeah, and the Diggs thing's pretty much up in the air too. So, what does that do, David? Everybody sees Zach Martin saying he's going to retire, and technically they're going to release him as a June 1 cut. So they can spread the restructure bonus over 2 years. But it's like, well, you got to draft a guard, or you got to draft a running back. Well, what about a linebacker? What about a defensive end? What about a cornerback? Jordan Lewis, by the way, is an unrestricted free agent also. So add that to the unknown about Trayvon Diggs. A cornerback starts looking pretty good if you can't get Jordan Lewis re-signed. And they only signed him last year to a 1-year deal, $2.8 million, and he played awfully well. And so I saw one of these projections. They ranked the top 101 unrestricted free agents that were going to be available. Now, Osa was 7th. DeMarcus Lawrence, what about a defensive end? He was 49th, and the other guys that they listed from the Cowboys were in the 60s. So, yeah, that's another position that you got to take care of if Diggs indeed, and you're going to have to project these things, right? And you're going to have to be accurate. And we know the accuracy of medical health, that it's not, you're not 100% sure all the time. So, yeah, that's another thing that they've got to kind of take a look at. So, those 2 injuries right there, pretty significant for the Cowboys going forward. And the decisions they're going to have to make by, April 24th, the draft?
Mm-hmm. Mickey, I'm curious about how they feel about Terrence Steele now 2 years off the injury. He's not had the best couple years since coming back from that. He has a very large cap number, and a post-June 1st cut would save them $14 million, and not as much dead money as some of the other deals that they've made over the next few years. Do you feel that because of the way they feel about Asim Richards, Tyler Guyton, and that he could be a candidate to maybe get released given his the gigantic cap savings they have, or are they in a position on the offensive line where might as well give him another year because they do have a lot of questions about who the starting 5 is going to be and maybe where Connor Riley year 1 is the offensive line coach?
Yeah, you just opened up a new can of worms if you do that, right? Because you don't have, my thought was Asim Richards should challenge Tyler Guyton for the starting left tackle position. Now you would have 2 tackle positions up in the air. They restructured his contract last year. I would imagine they'll do it again this year to lower the cap hit. Off the top of my head, I want to say it was around 18 million, maybe something in 14, 18 million.
14. Yeah.
14. Yeah.
I looked it up before we talked.
They could restructure it and lower the cap charge and push some money down the road. Look, yeah, he did not have the season you would have liked him to have, but again, he's a right tackle. I believe they trust his run blocking, and they're hoping the pass blocking would improve. And if they're going to get more serious about running the football, then maybe run blocking becomes a priority.
Mickey, we brought this up. Craig has a segment on Tuesdays and Thursdays, Off the Radar, which can be football, can be even a little college football, but it's some alternate type stories that are away from the core of college football. But one of them was the NFL looking at a way to measure what really is a first down, the Josh Allen, Buffalo, Kansas City, whatever. I showed a contraption, a device that my grandfather patented back in the 60s. Didn't get anything with it, get anywhere with it. But why in the hell is this so difficult? For them to figure it out when they can find out if a guy's toe is inside the back line in the end zone.
Yeah, and I think what I read or what they're trying to do is figure out where the placement of the ball ends up being.
Yes.
And if nothing else, as a backup, right? Sort of, kind of what they're getting to in the minor leagues in baseball with the automated balls and strikes. The umpires still can call it. But if you want to challenge it, well, you got the Cyclops there to let you know what that process looked like or what it should be, yes or no. And I think that would help out. David, I could remember back in, 89, 90, when Tex Schramm wanted to put some sort of function, some chip in the football to be able to discern if it was a touchdown or not, if the ball actually touched the goal line. And everybody's like, oh, yeah, you're crazy. Well, maybe not so crazy. He was just 30, 35 years ahead of his time, right? And so, if you can do that in tennis with serves at 110 miles an hour, you ought to be able to place a football when the guy maybe 10 miles an hour. And I think it's something that needs to be developed and it needs to be experimented with in the preseason.
Mickey, draft-wise, we don't know about where the compensatory picks are going to fall, but they're going to likely get 3 of them, so that'll give them a lot of picks. Would it surprise you to see them, like, for example, you mentioned defensive tackle. Like, if they get into free agency after Osa and they don't really like anybody other than like a flyer kind of a guy for depth, would you see them maybe drafting 2 of a position, something they haven't really done a lot of? Usually they kind of check, like, I don't want to say check boxes, but like once they've drafted a tight end, they're not going to draft another one because that's the tight end they're going to look at. But given the fact that they don't have a lot of running backs on the roster, they don't have a lot of tight ends on the roster, they don't have a lot of wide receivers on the roster necessarily, that might be something where you see maybe a position or so that like maybe they get 2 guys that do that.
You want to throw in defensive end and linebacker too?
Yeah. Linebacker might be the one I would put over maybe all of them, given the fact that they have some guys on the roster, but like you mentioned with Overshown, I mean, when's that going to be?
Yeah, and think about this at linebacker. Eric Kendricks led them in tackles, but he's an unrestricted free agent. And with the cap going up and everybody having more money to spend, might be tough to re-sign him. If Overshown's not ready to go and you're thinking, well, Mike has got to play defensive end, who's playing linebacker besides, Leofau? I mean, they just don't have the depth there. I could see them doubling up. I could see them, trying to cover themselves in free agency with just kind of insurance type guys, not, knocking it out of the park with giving somebody a $20 million a year offer in free agency. And if you read between the lines for the free agency part of it, when Stephen Jones says selectively aggressive, well, what he meant was we still have cap problems and we can't go out there and just splurge because they're going to have to restructure the contracts of Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb just for starters. I mentioned Steele. And try to sign Micah to an extension just to get enough money to be under the cap to start with, and then to be able to, afford a draft because you've got to have money when you pick a draft choice, and then maybe bring in some, kind of medium wage free agents. They've got a lot to think about. So. The draft can help them out if they can hit on guys that can, those first 2 days that can come in and contribute, sort of what they did last last year with the first, second. Marshawn Nealon was going to be a player until he hurt his knee, and then he only played 11 games. They were going to start him. He only got one start at defensive end. And at defensive end, by the way, they're banking on Sam Williams coming back from his torn ACL from training camp. Now, he should be ready to go. But again, how ready are you when you're coming back from an ACL and you're being counted on to be one of the maybe top 2-3 defensive ends? Because you need defensive ends. You can't expect Micah at his size to play 55 snaps at defensive end. It's just not going to happen. So you're going to need defensive ends too. So doubling up, oh, absolutely. I don't think anything's off the books to be able to do in the draft.
Mickey, one question I have, and then thank you for your time. You see now the trend in college football because money is so prevalent that it's obvious there's like a salary cap now, revenue sharing, all of this money, NIL, and they're hiring former NFL personnel or general managers or those who have been a part of that. What are your thoughts
media
about,
guys?
Or media guys.
I want that job. I want to be a GM.
Yeah. Like, for example, Jim Nagy, who ran the Super Bowl, the Senior Bowl, among others.
Yeah.
Matt Rule just hired a guy with the Patriots in Carolina. What are your thoughts about that trend into college football?
I think you should put your hand up in the air as closely as you follow it, right? You could be the GM.
No, I am not by any means. I'm still the one that said that Reggie McNeil would be a better college football player than Vince Young coming out of high school, which I had some basis for saying that, but boy, was I dead wrong. So I'm done.
No, I think it's amazing. And here, this is kind of a side story, what you're talking about. So February 25th, Tuesday, right? Today is the 27th. So it's February 25th was the 36-year anniversary of Jerry buying the Cowboys. So I'm going through the stuff I have that I can go back into the newspaper clips from back in '89 because I wanted to make sure when Jimmy Johnson had his opening press conference. And I got reminded that February 25th, 1987 was the day SMU was sentenced to the death penalty, right?
Yep.
Same day, February 25th. And what did they get sentenced for? Paying players. Imagine that.
You were there, didn't you write an article? I know
did.
You wrote an article in the Times-Herald, right?
We had a afternoon edition, so the guys that were actually covering it, and had to ask questions in the press conference were doing that. I was sitting in the back, knocking out kind of a play-by-play story on that to get it out by whenever before David Burst he passed out. Remember? He hyperventilated. The other thing that got reminded of the '89 February 25th, 1989 was 10 days before that, the Dallas Mavericks traded Mark Aguirre, which was a big deal back then, right?
Mm-hmm.
But everybody with this Luka thing think this is the biggest deal that's ever happened in Dallas-Fort Worth history. They forgot about what took place when Jerry Jones bought the team, right? They forgot about what a big deal it was that Mark Aguirre got traded. He was the head of the franchise at that point. So there's been other things that have happened in this league. But the thing that stuck out was the fact that in '87, on the same day, February 25th, is when SMU had their the death sentence, and they didn't get back to a bowl game until 2010.
Yeah. Well, we had Coop on Tuesday because Luka was playing against the Mavericks, and he also was at that press conference that day and brought that up, how things have changed so dramatically with what was then compared to what is now. And it is amazing. It really, really is.
Yeah, I don't think anybody brought a coffin out to Reunion Arena when they traded Mark
Aguirre. Man,
and here's the darn thing, and I didn't get a chance to maybe talk about this or say it. If if Anthony Davis had played the other night, the Mavericks are winning that game.
Yeah, I watched the first part of it.
They shot 35% from the field and came within 8 points of tying that game up and sending it to overtime.
Yeah.
It was 91-91 with 5 minutes to go, despite what Luka was doing, right? So you add Anthony Davis to kind of what they were thinking about, it'd be interesting. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, it's such an amazing story. The emotions are so high. They really, really are. And Aguirre, Blackman, and all that back in the days when the Mavericks made that trade. Thank you very much, buddy. Appreciate your time, Mickey.
Okay, good to be with you guys.
Mickey, you too. Mickey Spagnola, DallasCowboys.com. This is 365 Sports and Paul Catalina. And his top 5, Gene Hackman, is that right?
No, this is sports movies.
Oh, okay. Sports movies. Yeah. Next on 365 Sports.
You can
You spent hours selecting your patio sofa. Choosing that grill would have taken weeks. Probably your car needed way more time. For sure, you would have spent months mulling over that pool of yours. Protecting your prized possessions needs no time, though. Just visit coversandall.com, create a custom size per your requirements, pick a fabric, and personalize your cover. And leave the rest to us. Premium protection for all that you love.
Protect your online privacy with NordVPN. Browse securely, access content from anywhere, and keep your data safe with military-grade encryption. Whether at home or on the go, NordVPN ensures your digital freedom. Stay secure. Download NordVPN today at nordvpn.com. That's NORDVPN.com.
This is Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Ticket Club. Forget the fees, just big savings. Click the link in the description to find out more.
Welcome into Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Ticket Club. Today, in honor of the legendary Gene Hackman and at the behest of David Smoak, we do Top 5 Best Sports Movies of All Time. Tomorrow, we will do the Top 5 Gene Hackman movies of all time. But I will tell you, and if you watched the triple option earlier today, I struggled with where to put Hoosiers on this list, if at all. I didn't want to just pander to Gene Hackman because he had passed away, although he is one of my favorite actors of all time. But we had to really talk it out. So if you wouldn't mind, go and watch that show and tell me if we're anywhere close to it on this. But I will tell you, they did make the list after much consternation between me and Garrett trying to figure it out. Number 5, The Longest Yard. The original with the one, the only, Burt Reynolds. An actor who probably couldn't go toe-to-toe with Gene Hackman when it comes to, the movie roles, but still a great American and a great man. A great Florida State Seminole, by the way. But The Longest Yard, hilarious football movie. Just so good, ahead of its time. Burt was so funny in this movie. Everybody was funny in this movie. The football is great in this movie. They're just lines that you can say over and over and over again. It's how I learned what a drop kick was. It's just unbelievable. Love The Longest Yard. And yes, Adam Sandler made a remake that Burt did star in as well. But I'll tell you this, the original Longest Yard, one of the GOAT sports movies of all time. Number 4, Hoosiers. This is the famous scene where Gene Hackman, in spite of only having 6 players on the team, decides he's not putting a 5th guy on the floor because he's teaching lessons. This movie is the best basketball movie about a collective team. Most often basketball movies focus on one guy, which is fine because basketball is the kind of sport where there's often 2 or 3 guys on the floor whose job is not quite as interesting as the star player. It's why we were so fascinated by Dennis Rodman in real life, because rebounding is not sexy like scoring is. So when the guy dyes his hair and all that, we get more interested. This is the best movie about a team, a coach, and them finding each other, really, because, look, Coach Hale here, not really at his best as a human being at all points in this story, but he knew what the goal was and he knew how to get it out of them, but he even had to learn a little bit too, which makes Hoosiers a top 5 all-time sports movie, because it did kind of change the trajectory of where sports movies were before that and then after that. So it did make the list, even though I struggle with it because I don't think it's a top 5 Gene Hackman movie, mostly because he did so many just amazing movies. Number 3, by the way, also, back to Hoosiers for a second. He just did it because he needed the money. He didn't like it when he was shooting it. He was very difficult with the director. And then when he saw the final cut, because he refused to do the voiceovers and he saw the final cut, was amazed at how good it was and didn't understand the whole time. So even Gene Hackman didn't think this movie was good while he was making it, and it just came out good in the end because he refused to kind of trust the process. But congratulations to Hoosiers for making an unhappy guy happy at the end. Number 3, Miracle. Easily the greatest hockey movie of all time. One of the greatest sports stories of all time. Well acted and well delivered, especially by Kurt Russell. Another one of my favorite actors. I'll see Kurt Russell in anything that he's in. But he was so good as Herb Brooks in this movie. This movie is so fun to watch. It's easily rewatchable over and over and over again, which what makes it one of the great sports movies of all time and the greatest hockey movie of all time, narrowly beating out the Paul Newman classic Slapshot, which should be required viewing for any hockey fan. And the biggest hockey fan we have in this room, as of this taping, has not seen Slapshot.
I failed.
He did. You know what? You're down. Like I'm closer to you on the hockey fan board than that. Number 2, in my opinion, the greatest baseball movie of all time, Bull Durham. Many baseball movies are fantastical or kind of far-fetched. Major League's a great one. A little far-fetched. Bull Durham is the best movie about the culture and the spirit of baseball you could possibly imagine. Because it takes the minor league Durham Bulls, it takes the small town, the passion that a small town has for it, the life of a minor league baseball player, which is very itinerant and very hard a lot of the time. It shows the journey of Kevin Costner's Crash Davis, who been trying to get back to the majors all this time and trying to figure out what his legacy is. And then a big dumb idiot like Nuke Lelouch here, played by Tim Robbins, who's been gifted with a thunderbolt for a right arm. It also has one of the some of the best lines ever, including, "I held it like an egg." Yeah, and he scrambled, that son of a bitch, didn't he? Number 1, greatest sports movie of all time, Rocky. This movie changed how all sports movies are made, won a ton of Academy Awards. This is how good this is. Sylvester Stallone, who is pretty much a one-note actor, and I'm not saying that in a bad way, but if you've seen Sylvester Stallone act in something, he's pretty much playing Sylvester Stallone. But this character that he's played over and over and over again, he's found new depths with every single time he's done it, except for Rocky V, which I choose to believe didn't happen. But this movie that he made in a shoestring budget because he refused to let Burt Reynolds star in it. Now, normally, not letting Burt Reynolds star in your movie is a mistake. But Rocky was about Philly, it was about him, and it was about so much more. And one of the reasons it's so great is he doesn't win in the first one. Rocky doesn't win until the second one, which is different because usually most sports movies end with the protagonist winning. But this was about a nobody becoming a somebody, and that's why it's so great and spawned so many wonderful sequels. And I don't care what Smokey says about them, because he's going to come on right after I say this, and he's going to talk crap about every Rocky movie past this one. He's wrong. Wrong. And the world has proved him wrong. That's why there's 6 Rocky movies and 3 Creeds. Really good. Or 7 Rocky movies. I don't know. However many there are. Rocky V, not counting, throws me all off. Anyway, this list was done at Smokey's request, so at my request, he must end the show now and not say anything about Rocky 2, 3, 4, Rocky Balboa, or any of the Creed movies.
Well, you've already mentioned them.
Done. Rest
Yep,
in peace, Gene
You've
Hackman.
already mentioned them, but I did love Rocky 1. I wish it would have just ended there. All right, Gene Hackman, rest in peace.
But
and
he didn't
whatever.
win, Smokey. You had to see him win in Rocky 2.
Not necessarily. All right, thank you, Paul. Appreciate it. Craig Smoak, our great sponsors. Those of you who watch us, whether it's on Twitter at 365 Sports YT or YouTube, 365 Sports right here. We're back at it again tomorrow, 10:30 tonight on the local CW, 365 Sports tonight with 4 of the best segments from today. Emery Winter's working on that. For Andrew Valade and Garrett Ross and for everybody that's a part of what we do every day right here, 365 Sports, I'm David Smoak. Good night.